Okay. Hello. Ooh, sorry. That was louder than the last meeting. Sorry. Sorry, since it's 7:01, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order and read the following notice. Notice is hereby given of the regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey at 7 p.m. on the evening of Tuesday, December 14th, 2021 in Cafeteria B of Westfield High School at 550 Dorian Road, Westfield, New Jersey. Please be advised all attendees must wear masks. The purpose of the meeting is to transact the regular business of the board and to transact any other business to come properly before the board. This is to advise the general public and to instruct that it be recorded in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield School Board on Thursday, December 9th, 2021, caused to be posted at the office of the Board of Education located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, the Westfield Library, Town Clerk of Westfield, Tap Into Westfield, and Patch.com, a meeting notice setting forth the time, date, and location of this meeting. Dana, could we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Sahar Aziz. Michael Beelan. Here. Brendan Galligan. Here. Rob Garrison. Here. Layla Morelli. Here. Gretchen Oleg. Here. Tara Porto. Sona Patel. Amy Root.
Here. Gretchen, could you lead us in a flag salute, please? One more time. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, before we get started, we have a couple of what we call regular announcements, and then we have some special announcements and some people joining us for a special evening. So we'll start with the regular announcements first. Rob, I believe you have one?
I do. The Westfield High School Choral Department is proud to announce that 27 student musicians were accepted into the 2022 Region Chorus, the largest number of acceptances in recent memory. There are 5 top scorers across multiple sections, including 2 who finished first in their sections. A student's audition consisted of singing 3 scales, a solo, and their part to a Renaissance polyphonic quintet called the Silver Swan. Our student musicians will join others from Central Jersey in a Region Chorus concert at Monroe Township High School on January 30th. The list of accepted Region musicians will be posted soon on the district website and social media. Congratulations.
Gretchen?
Yes, 3 members of the Westfield High School Orchestra were selected to perform with the Central Jersey Region 2 Orchestra. They were selected from more than 600 students who faced rigorous auditions. Those students are Kevin Chen, grade 11 viola, Yen Jae Hu, grade 10 violin, and Owen Wee, grade 9 violin. The Region 2 performance will take place in January at Monroe Township High School. Congratulations to all.
All Westfield Public Schools will be closed from Friday, December 24th through Friday, December 31st for winter recess. We look forward to welcoming all students back on Monday, January 3rd.
And the next scheduled meeting of the Board of Education will be on a Thursday, January 6th, 2022, here in Cafeteria B at Westfield High School. This will be an organizational meeting as we welcome our new board members. All attendees are required to wear a mask. The meeting will also be live streamed via the district YouTube channel, which you can access by clicking on Board Meeting Recordings Current Year on the Board tab of the district website at www.westfieldnjk12.org. The complete meeting agenda of the meeting will be available on Friday, December 31st, also on the Board tab on the district website. All right, and now on to our special announcements and our special guests for the evening. Tonight, we honor 2 Westfield High School fall teams who had phenomenal seasons. These student athletes are dedicated and tireless. They remained committed to perfecting their game and supporting each other as teammates, and it certainly shows. We also want to thank the girls' coaches, families, and all who continue to support them in their athletic journey. We start with the girls' varsity tennis team. The team beat JP Stevens 5-0 in October to win the North 2 Group 4 sectional championship. They finished their season 17-4, ranking 9th in the state. Before I ask Coach Varley up to say a few words, let me first call each member of the girls' varsity tennis team up to receive a certificate of recognition from our superintendent, Dr. Raymond Gonzalez. After you accept the certificate, please proceed to the stage to await a photograph. Your families will be invited to take pictures as well. So first up is Savannah Cohen. And Valentina Cosenza. Lola Gagan. Katie Peretz. Emily Chabanow? Sorry. Okay. Peyton Silverman? Emerson Stoller? Annika Vasuna. Bianca Vasuna. Madison Wright. Sophia Zing. Okay. Isabella Zhang. Isabella here? No? And Natalie Zelikowski. Is she here? No? No? Okay. So we'll hang on to those and make sure the girls get those. As I invite Coach Matt Varley to the podium, I also want to recognize him for his 201 wins as the Blue Devils head coach. Please come on up, Coach Varley.
Thank you. We'd like to first thank the parents. We want to thank the board, Dr. Gonzalez, the school administration, the entire school staff for supporting our season this year. Girls, I want to personally thank you for your effort, dedication, and commitment to the program this year. Congratulations on sectional championship, and good luck with the rest of the school year. Thank you.
Congratulations again to all of you for this amazing achievement. I think we're going to take pictures now up on the stage for just a brief moment. So parents of the girls, if you'd like to come up to take a more up-close picture, that would be fine.
Maybe like this flyer there? With that.
Oh, yeah. Should we go a little?
You want to go on the second?
Maybe a middle row.
Oh, the corner does go down, right?
Shorter people.
Oh, and I'm too tall. I'll go down.
I'm going down too. There it is. We're good. Got it.
Does October feel like 100 years ago? Oh.
My wife both went into Layla, by the way. In the 3-4 semifinal. So we won the semifinal. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. Good job.
Okay. All right. Are we ready, Dr. Gonzalez? All right. Next up is our girls varsity soccer team. Where do I start? This incredible group ended their season as Group 4 state champions and as the only undefeated team in the state, with a record of 21 wins, 0 losses, and 1 tie. They finished the season ranked number 1 in the state by NJ.com and number 12 in the country by the United Soccer Coaches Association. NJ.com and the Courier News named them New Jersey Team of the Year and junior Alyssa Martinez New Jersey Player of the Year. Along the way, they won conference, county, and sectional championships and other honors. 12 players were named All-County and 2 players named to All-State teams. The coaching staff received recognition as well, awarded Union County Coaching Staff of the Year by NJ.com and the Courier News Coaching Staff of the Year. Before I call head coach Alex Schmidt to the podium to say a few words about his team, I will call each of the players up to receive a certificate of recognition from Dr. Gonzalez. Please remember to proceed onto the stage after receiving your certificate to await photographs, and I will invite the coaching staff up to receive certificates as well. Catherine Angel. Ella Cadigan. Chiara Cosenza. No, not here tonight? Okay. Kimberly DiFilippo. Kira Dursey. Sutton Factor. Elise Fox. No, I'm not here? Okay. Isabel Gautier. Kate Giglio. Okay. Gabby Gill. Jane Guglielmo. Emma Kolesoglu. Chelsea Little. Alyssa Martinez. Bridget Morrison. Marissa O'Connell. Olivia Rosario. Ellie Sherman. Kelly Sullivan. Audra Toth. Jana Velkov. And last but not least, Emily Weinstein. All right, and coaches as well. If any of our coaches are here tonight, JV coach Karen or Corrine Helwig. Freshman coach Caitlin Sanchez. Sorry. Volunteer coach Bernie Cuddy. Volunteer assistant coach Chris Carson. Volunteer assistant coach Catherine Ponce. Volunteer assistant coach Katie Wertheimer. There we go. And again, last but not least, head coach Alex Schmidt. Coach Schmidt, would you like to make a few remarks before joining your players on the stage?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for having us here tonight. And we'll just start off by saying 8 seconds. That's what our season came down to. For our team to score with 8 seconds left in the Group 4 state finals shows you just what type of athletes we have on the stage tonight. There's nothing more empowering for your peers, for your families, for the young players in town than watching young, confident athletes performing at the highest level and being successful at the highest level by doing what you love. Coach Wertheimer and I got to watch your drive, your focus, and your growth throughout the entire year. It took 22 players to win this championship, and those 8 seconds were built on many, many memorable moments throughout the season. Moments like our 3-day team building trip to Fairview Lake, moments of adversity, like illness and like injury, as you can kind of see on the stage, and many moments of pure fun and laughter. This 2021 girls soccer team is arguably one of the top 2 teams in the 41-year history of girls soccer here at WHS. Coach Wertheimer and all the other coaches that were just named are proud just to be along for the ride and hope that the stories of this team will resonate throughout town, throughout the younger future players of this program, and to inspire them to hopefully win their 8 seconds of glory too. Congratulations and thank you.
Said for the other team, come on up, parents, if you'd like to come get a better, more up-close photo.
So like half of you go down and then the other half.
Oh, yeah, you're gonna have to do the tall, short girls one more time.
There we go.
We thought we were done with that.
I came to your last 3 games, but nobody had masks on. And
What is in front?
yes. Awesome.
I'll do the math.
This is so tall.
Hey. Thank you again.
Thanks, Coach. All right.
Stay up or do I do this part?
You're next. So, oh no, actually, well, departing.
Yeah, so I stay over there or?
Are you going to hand them?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right. Sure. Well, I'll read and you'll present? Okay, all right. All right, thank you so much to our athletes and their families for coming tonight. Congratulations again for a truly tremendous season. Obviously, we have a little bit of a shift change here. Okay. some more. Okay. All right. I think I'll go ahead and move along to the next portion of our evening, which is to recognize our 3 departing board members. So it pains me to say this because I've spent a lot of time with these 3 people, and I'm going to miss the heck out of them. But it is, to everything there is a season, right? Turn. So I have 3 resolutions to read about each of our retiring board members. I'm going to start with Tara Oporto, who unfortunately is not able to join us tonight, but I'd like to read the resolution for her and acknowledge her for her service. Whereas Tara Oporto has served for 3 years on the Westfield Board of Education with dedication to the children, families, and community members of Westfield, and whereas as an active member of the Curriculum, Instruction, and Programs, Technology and Communication, Facilities, and Legislation Committees, Tara Oporto has contributed her analytical expertise and many volunteer hours. And whereas Tara Oporto has represented the Board of Education as liaison to the Parent-Teacher Organization of the Lincoln Early Childhood Center, the Parent-Teacher Council Special Education Committee, and the Westfield Memorial Library, always with community in mind and a willingness to listen. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this Board of Education recognizes Tara Oporto for her volunteerism and service on the Westfield Board of Education from 2019 to 2021, and that this resolution be presented to Tara Oporto on December 14th, 2021, and that a copy of this resolution attesting to the appreciation of the Board of Education becomes part of the official minutes of this meeting. So again, we're sorry she's not able to join us tonight, but if we could all take a moment to acknowledge her service, that would be great. Comments at the end, don't you think? Okay. Comments at the end, all right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Hope you don't mind. We're going to hold our special comments until the end. All right. Next up is Robert Garrison, who's been on the board since 2016. Whereas Robert Garrison has served with dedication to the children, families, and community members of Westfield for 6 years on the Westfield Board of Education, and whereas Robert Garrison's expertise in public finance, labor relations, and school construction has proved invaluable as chairperson of the Budget and Finance Committee, and whereas as a past chairperson of the Technology and Communications Committee, Robert Garrison has championed technology upgrades in our schools and clear, transparent communication to our school community. And whereas Robert Garrison has served as a past chairperson of the Legislation Committee, following legislative initiatives and keeping the board informed of important policymaking at the state and local levels. And whereas Robert Garrison has served with distinction on the District Restart Committee during the challenges COVID-19 presented in reopening our schools. And whereas Robert Garrison has volunteered countless hours as an active member on many committees, including long-range planning, facilities, negotiations, and curriculum, instruction, and programs, and as liaison to the Parent-Teacher Organization of Wilson Elementary School, Parent-Teacher Council Special Education Committee, the Garden State Coalition of Schools, and the Westfield Recreation Commission. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this Board of Education recognizes Robert Garrison for his volunteerism and service on the Westfield Board of Education from 2016 to 2021, and that this resolution be presented to Robert Garrison, this resolution, Dr. Gonzalez is holding it, on December 14th, 2021, and that a copy of this resolution attesting to the appreciation of the Board of Education becomes part of the official minutes of this meeting. I think we could take a minute and have maybe Rob and Dr. Gonzalez take a photo together. Is that all right, Marianne? Okay, great, thank you. You're a little closer to Marianne? I do want to get it. Your wall space for that. Okay. All right, and the lady who got me into this, Gretchen Oleg. Whereas Gretchen Oleg has served for 10 years on the Westfield Board of Education with dedication to the children, families, and community members of Westfield, and whereas as president of the Board of Education from 2016 to 2018, Gretchen Oleg has provided intelligent, articulate, and compassionate leadership, always keeping the best interests of the students at the forefront. And whereas Gretchen Oleg has served as chairperson of the Long Range Planning Committee, overseeing exhaustive examinations of the complicated question of implementing full-day kindergarten in the Westfield Public Schools and seeking innovative ways to connect with Westfield High School alumni. And whereas as chairperson of the Technology and Communication Committee, Gretchen Oleg has remained committed to providing clear communication and leveraging technology in our schools. And whereas during her tenure, Gretchen Oleg also has served as chairperson of the Facilities, Policies, and Curriculum Instruction and Programs Committees, where her legal expertise and attention to detail proved invaluable. And whereas as a member of every other committee on the board, including Budget and Finance, Legislation, and Negotiations, and as a liaison to the Parent-Teacher Council, the Town Council, Westfield Recreation Commission, Westfield Memorial Library Board, District Staff Evaluation Committee, and the Parent-Teacher Student Organizations of Westfield High School, Roosevelt Intermediate School, and Jefferson and Wilson Elementary Schools, Gretchen Oleg has given countless volunteer hours to serve the students in the Westfield Public Schools. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this Board of Education recognizes Gretchen Oleg for her volunteerism and service on the Westfield Board of Education from 2012 to 2021, and that this resolution be presented to Gretchen Oleg on December 14th, 2021, and that a copy of this resolution attesting to the appreciation of the Board of Education becomes part of the official minutes of this meeting. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, and I think if you just need to indulge us board members for a few more minutes, we really need to thank these people who have served, as you can see, kind of the range of terms on the board. It's a shame that Tara's not able to join us tonight, but it certainly attests to her love of and loyalty to her family, which is larger than most of ours here on the table. So it's a shame she couldn't join us tonight, but she always brought a fresh perspective and was a compassionate listener and very articulate in making her case. So her perspective is going to be missed, but we certainly know that she will continue to be a full and vital member of the community, and I'm sure will continue to reach out when she has things she needs us to hear. So I don't know if we should go around according to board members or summarize all of our comments, because I don't know what's the right way to do this.
I mean, I have something I'd like to read,
Please.
if that's okay.
That would be great.
But I'm happy to wait or defer to Rob.
That would be wonderful.
So when I joined the Board of Education 10 years ago, I had a third grader, a fifth grader, 2 sixth graders, and an 8th grader. That third grader just came home for winter break from his freshman year of college, and the 8th grader is a college graduate. Time flies. I've heard it said that there's only one thing more precious than our time, and that's who we spend it on. In that context, I am incredibly grateful for the time I've spent on this board. Alongside so many smart, service-minded, committed members of our community, many of whom I believe and hope will remain my lifelong friends. Sorry, I'm getting a little. In my experience, being a member of the Board of Education has been and should remain an opportunity to serve without political influence or sway. At the end of the day, when it comes to our kids, none of that matters. I've enjoyed the opportunity to sit around a table with people of different backgrounds and beliefs and focus singularly on keeping our school district among the best. I don't think it will be a surprise to anyone that I'm looking forward to reclaiming my Tuesday nights. The last 18 months have been particularly difficult with what feels like a deepening chasm in our community. It's tempting to try and come up with some wise words that will help close the divide, but I recognize that that's not possible. First, I'm not that wise. And second, many have decided that I live on one side of that divide such that anything that I say is disregarded. The reality is that the last 18 months have been a sad time to be on the board. Sad because I see and hear real fear among many parents on both sides of each issue about what is happening in our schools. I don't believe it's productive to try and characterize each other's fears and concerns in a binary way, good or bad, villains or heroes. Your fear that your child may be exposed to information that you do not want them to have is just as legitimate as my fear that my child may not see themselves or their family reflected in books in the classroom. Both fears are honest and true. Manipulating information to push an agenda or to allege some grand conspiracy theory does nothing to help us reach resolution on these issues. And when we can't talk about things in a safe way, our kids pay the price. I'm also sad because I am sometimes afraid to leave a board meeting. Sad because I've been called more names in the past 18 months than I care to count. Sad because we seem more fearful of having open, honest conversations about race than we are of a virus that has killed over 500,000 people. I sincerely hope that the next year brings an end to the scolding and finger wagging and the beginning of calm, open conversations with a willingness to listen. Someone from the community has suggested the possibility of a town hall format to allow for such discussions. I don't know if that's the solution, but I agree that they are difficult to have within the confines of the Board of Ed meetings and the governing rules of order. I hope the board and the administration looks for and finds ways to create these opportunities. In no way do I want to create the impression that I would trade my time on the board because that is not the way I feel. I will miss the opportunities to learn from this district's outstanding and dedicated teachers. I thank them for their patience as they schooled me in Westfield's tradition of excellence and for their openness in sharing their perspectives with me over the years. I will miss seeing my fellow board members regularly and the opportunities to share our lives, our children, and our time, even when we disagreed at the board table. I will especially miss my friend Brendan Galligan, with whom I have served the longest. You impress me endlessly with your photographic memory and lightning recall of our collective history. I've loved watching you grow into a leadership role on the board, and I cannot wait to see what comes next for you. Amy, Rob, Michael, and Tara, it has been an honor to be in the trenches with you. And Layla, Sahar, and Sonal, though we did not have much time together, I'm so grateful that you're on the board, and I feel confident leaving it in your capable hands. Thank you a million times over to Dr. Dolan, Dr. Gonzalez, Paul Pinero, Mike Weissman, Marianne McGann, Brian Ocker, and all the members of the central staff. You are tireless and resilient, and our kids are so lucky to have you. To Barbara Ball, you are all class. So strong in your elegant and quiet way, you are the very best of what Westfield can create, and you outshine the loud and extroverted among us every time. To Dana Sullivan, you are the smartest one in the room every single day. You are little but mighty, and you keep the district on track, always looking 10 steps ahead. And you have the patience of a saint. Answering questions I know I've asked you a million times before, you helped me be the best board member I could be. But for my time on the board, our paths likely would not have crossed, and that truly would have been a loss for me. I want to thank the community for the opportunity to serve, and finally, I want to thank my family. My wife Liz, Jim, and all of our kids, for the Tuesday night leftovers you ate, for all the times we texted goodnight because I wasn't going to make it home for bedtime, for all the times being a board member's kid may not have worked in your favor, and for always telling me you were proud. Thank you. I am the luckiest. Thank you.
Well, that's certainly the last time I'm going to follow Gretchen when she speaks. I didn't prepare any notes, but I've certainly been thinking a lot about this night for a number of weeks now. I've been on the board for 6 years. I'm probably the only person to serve on the board and get 2 plaques because I lost my re-election, but then was appointed to fill a spot, and then I decided to run 3 of the last 4 years to stay on the board, although unsuccessfully this past November. The 6 years have been tremendous. You hear a lot about the word transparency, and I feel like it's something that I laugh at now, and I look at data because I probably used that word about 1,000 times the first 2 meetings that we had and talking about transparency, but very proud of the accomplishments and everything that we've done in my time on the board. It's been just a tremendous learning period. Really dedicated myself to it, and as Gretchen said, your family is as dedicated as you are because they give up all the time that you spend. This year we probably had, I was telling this to someone earlier today, for this calendar year, I think we've averaged, if we did all of our work that we're supposed to do and read all the emails, everything, we averaged about 8 to 10 hours a week as a school board member, not as president or vice president of the board, as a board member on issues this year. But it's because that there were so many important things that we had to do. And when you look at the past 18 months and what we were able to accomplish as a district, despite comments that maybe to the other, that spoke otherwise to it, with Dr. Dolan's leadership at the beginning of COVID and what she was able to do when she had 9 board members giving their 9 different opinions and then countless parents as well. But we always stood by her, and that's what a board should do. A board should really stand by their superintendent, and I'm very glad that we spent almost 50 hours or so of the process of selecting Dr. Gonzalez as our new superintendent moving forward. Because when you get on this board, and Gretchen alluded to it, you're part of a family on this board as well. You're one of 9, and the idea is that you represent the district. You're not representing yourself individually. You're not representing any individual parents. You're not representing any individual concern. You're representing the district and by default, the board. And so, it's really important that as the new board members are now a year in and the new board members come on it, they remember that. No one has ever said don't express your feelings. No one has always said that you need to be afraid of having an opposing view on this board. But what I find very important to consider as we move forward, because unfortunately I think we've seen this a lot this year and recently, where instead of some board members having the concern of the board in mind, they had others in mind ahead of them. And so instead of having issues brought up to the board and discussed amongst the board, it was done in a public forum where there may be a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks in between meetings where you have time to then address those issues. As a board, we're supposed to address issues as quickly as we can to address the needs of the students, to address the needs of teachers, and the community at large. And I hope that as the board moves forward under the leadership that we have now and in the future, that continues to be the case and that strengthened. It's also unfortunate, I know Gretchen mentioned some of the issues, when people come up and speak during the public comment period, and I know we say this now, we didn't in the past, is that really it's a free-for-all. Whoever comes up can say whatever they want, but that doesn't mean that it's factual. It doesn't mean that it's truthful. It doesn't mean that we agree or disagree, because it's a public comment period, and we really are not here to have a Q&A during that period of time. And so it's very frustrating. I even joked with Dr. Gonzalez earlier. I was going to say I was going to resign from the board now so I can come up and speak at the public session, because there are certain things you cannot say as a board member that you wish you could say, but you can face an ethics violation. And so that's been frustrating at times, to say the least. But as a board, I think that we've done a tremendous job. And I thank Megan Avalone, the health officer. I thank the health department. I thank our nurses and our health staff. I mean, really what we've been able to accomplish and on a consistent basis, and not trying to just have a knee-jerk reaction to what's been going on, has been tremendous. And even during that whole time, what did we do just this year alone? We selected a new superintendent. We selected a new principal at Wilson. We have a couple of new assistant principals. We secured a 4-year contract with the teachers, and hopefully we're about to secure a nice contract with the secretary. So we've done a tremendous amount, and I'm very proud of the time on this board and very proud to be part of this. And I promise, so I'm not going to run again. So rest assured, this is it for me. And I even joked, I told this early to a few people, to hit home that point when we were at the secretary's negotiation session the other day. I got a text from my wife asking me where I was. And I said, well, I told you I'm at contract negotiations. She goes, but you lost. Why are you there? And so, obviously she's gotten over the fact that I'm on the board and wants me home more now. So I do thank everyone here. I thank especially again, Dana has been tremendous for me, because I thought I knew a lot when I came on the board, as do a lot of people tend to. And I was put in my place early on, even Gretchen too. Gretchen also schooled me a number of times because, again, you think you know until you realize you really don't know because the school board is so different. But I do appreciate my time, and I would do it all over again because it was such a tremendous time. I learned so much, so thank you all.
I'd like to say something. Over the last 9 years that I've been on the board, I've worked with 24 different board members. Gretchen's the only one who predates me on the board at this point. And I want to throw a number out there. 276. That's how many meetings we've sat through together. Public meetings, board meetings, executive sessions, or committee meetings over the last 9 years. Rob, your number is a little lower because you've only been on 6 years, but it's 209. I can't thank the both of you enough for the amount you've taught me about your aspect, what the perspectives you bring from your professional life, your personal life, your past experiences on governing boards, Rob and Gretchen. You've developed me into the board member that I am. Gretchen, when I got elected, I was 23. And most board members were nice, but few took me under their wing. You were one of the few. You've developed me into who I am. And it's hard to spend 9 years working with somebody and not consider them an extension of the family. So, Liz, congratulations, you're going to get Gretchen back. Erica, you're getting Rob back. I'm going to truly miss both of you, and I hope we stay in touch going forward.
We will. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great. Mike, do you have anything to?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I'll just mention, since Tara's not here, we see Tara at the board meetings, and she often presents her opinion, but there's a lot of little things that she talks about in the meetings, and one particular one particular time during a facilities meeting, I remember we were placing the air conditioners and we were reviewing the plans of the air conditioner, and she looked at the Wilson School positioning and she goes, "We can't put those air conditioners there. That's where the kids play. They would be upset and have nowhere to play." And she was able to go and talk with them and talk with the facilities people and get the air conditioner moved. She really cared about the kids, and she looked into those details to make sure whatever was in the best effort of the kids. And then as far as Rob, Rob has been just, every time I open up my email, I'm always finding some notification or news article, whether it be a state, local, or even a national level, of what's happening in the school districts and what can we do better. And he's continually striving to look at what can we do better for our kids and how can we make it better. And we spent a couple nights at Adams Tavern and Favara's, and we would just talk about school board issues and how can we go and what can we do for the kids to make things better. And he just truly cared about the kids, and it really shows through in his family. I see the pictures on his Facebook site, and he's going to be greatly missed on the board. And Gretchen, who's been a fixture on this board since I started, but even well before that, and I just did the number after Brendan was giving it. She's been on the board for 28% of Brendan's life. It's just, she always looks to see both sides of the issue, and in a very calm, compassionate, a thoughtful approach whenever we're discussing an issue. And I think she, just like she said when she spoke earlier, she understands both sides of the issue, and I use that as a model to make sure when we're looking at something, we don't just look at one side or the other. We look at what's doing the best for the children, and we're never going to find a way to agree, but we find the best approach to move things forward. So just for both of you and Tara, you're going to be greatly missed on the board, and best of luck going forward. We'll hopefully show up on Tuesdays when you want.
Absolutely. Sahar, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Sure.
I haven't had the opportunity to work more than 1 year with both of you, but I've learned a tremendous amount through observation. And I know in the beginning, Rob in particular was quite patient in getting me up to speed especially since I kept saying transparency probably 10 times a day. There's a lot that you learn coming in on the inside that you don't know when you're on the outside, and it takes a lot of patience by existing board members, Gretchen and Rob included, to kind of train you and teach you what to expect and what's the most effective way of being a fiduciary. So I want to thank Rob for his patience, and Gretchen, I can't believe that you've been on this board for 10 years. That in itself speaks volumes about your commitment to this district. In the 12 months I've been here, it's certainly been, it is a thankless job, and so the fact that you did it for 10 years is really impressive, and our children are all better off for it. So thank you for being here that long, and hopefully we can continue the legacy that you and other board members have established. And we will miss you very much, and I hope that you will come and visit, because now you get 3 minutes to talk every single meeting, and I hope that you exercise that right. But thank you for your service.
So to make you feel older, I think after one of our first board meetings, I said to my husband, I want to be Gretchen Oleg when I grow up, because I thought the way that you handled the meeting and then the follow-up after the meeting about your ability to self-reflect and reflect on how the whole situation had kind of unfolded was very diplomatic and very unbiased is the only word that I can think of. And I said, that would be my goal, is to be able to look at what is presented and to have an opinion and to have a belief, but to be fair. And I was blown away. So I do want to be you when I grow up, long time from now. No. And it really has been an honor. And you did say when I spoke to you before we were sworn in, you did say it takes a year to learn really what it is to be a board member. And I would say that, I need a lot more years. I think that you learn as you go, and I'm really so grateful for your expertise, and I hope you know I will still be calling you and asking you questions. And, you live close, so I may just stop by. And Rob, you are, I think, probably the most Renaissance man I've ever met in real life. You know a lot about a lot of things, and you are willing to help and guide and explain, and I couldn't be more grateful. Anything I need a recommendation for a restaurant. I need to understand why this is not allowed, why this should be done this way. So really, I can't thank you enough. I know I tell him I'm the little sister he never wanted, because I'm just like, and can you do this? And can we say this? But I wish you the best of luck, and it is Westfield's loss, but I hope to keep in touch. Thank you so much for everything.
And if I could just add a couple of words as well. Rob has been one of our best parliamentarians since I've been on the board, helping to remind us why we do things the way we do and what's the appropriate way to do it. Rob's connections throughout the state of New Jersey are mind-boggling. He knows people everywhere and in every line of work, and he shares that knowledge and the benefit of those connections with us, which has been wonderful. It's been great to meet his family and to hear about his daughter growing up. Who's now in middle school. So I hope I see you around the block, walking dogs or not. That would be great. And Gretchen, I can't remember, I do remember, I used to come to board meetings even before you were president, but you have been a fixture on this board and a tremendous resource for me and for other board members, and a friend. And like I alluded earlier, Gretchen talked me into interviewing in 2016. was a little ahead of schedule. That happens sometimes. I think Gretchen might have been willing to step down from the board a little while ago and was persuaded to stay. So it is a family here, and you have been a tremendous role model and really good, as Layla had said, in being dispassionate, but also compassionate, and so articulate, and speaking with heart, and yet so clearly that we're really going to miss you. You're a tough act to follow, and we're really grateful to both of you and to Tara as well for your time on the board. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. All right. Anybody else have anything to say, or should we? Okay. All right. In private later, we'll catch up on all of that. All right.
Oh, it's almost 8.
All right, it's almost 7:51, let's get moving. Okay, I would like to turn the microphone over to Dr. Gonzalez, who's going to give us an update. Thank you.
In our new meeting structure, we'll use the district administration report to share highlights, presentations, and information with members of the Board of Education and the public. Tonight, I have several topics in my report, so I will begin with highlights of the many activities and achievements taking place in our schools. Each month, I'm encouraged by what I see and hear going on because it shines a positive light on the tremendous efforts of our students and staff. Given the length of my report this evening, I'll just share a few of those highlights from the last several weeks. The Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee has drafted a framework and guiding principles and looks forward to sharing more about its work towards this district goal soon. Special Services staff members attended training sessions focused on student and staff mental health. And the budget process for the 22-23 school year is well underway, with several meetings taking place between school, department, and central office officials to identify the needs, opportunities, and challenges ahead. We continue our comprehensive tours of all schools to assess our short and long-term facility needs. And as part of my ongoing effort to meet members of our community, I've attended several school PTO meetings, with more PTO meetings planned for the new year. There are several community building activities at our schools, with a continued emphasis on giving kindness, empathy, and good character. Moving on, the New Jersey Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights Act requires each school district to rate itself annually as to how the district and each school has addressed 8 core elements: HIB programs, approaches, or other initiatives, training on the Board of Ed approved HIB policy, other staff instruction and training programs, curriculum and instruction on HIB and related information and skills, HIB personnel, school-level HIB incident reporting procedures, HIB investigation procedures, and HIB reporting. The self-assessments are completed by each school's climate committee, which is chaired by the school's anti-bullying specialist. Climate committee members include staff and a parent. In October, I shared the final grades for the 2019-2020 school year, and tonight, the 2020-2021 HIB self-assessment is on the agenda for approval this evening. If you click on the link on the website, you will also be able to see that report that is to be submitted. Once approved, the district will submit the self-assessment to the state, and I will provide a more detailed presentation at a future board meeting once the state has finalized the district's results. And I want to close tonight's report by further addressing the disturbing and disheartening events of the past 2 weeks. As someone who has faced discrimination in many forms throughout my entire life, I share in the collective anger and frustration that these expressions of hate continue in our town and our society. Although I joined the district at the start of the school year, I am now a member of this community. I'm a member of this school district, and I care for the more than 5,800 students who attend our schools as if they were my own. Therefore, I take acts of hate as a personal affront against those who I care about, whether it be anti-Semitic, anti-Black, anti-Muslim, whether it be hate against a member of the LGBTQ community or any member of this community, anti-immigrant, anti-Asian. Unfortunately, the hate has seen no boundaries, and therefore, together as a community, we must stand against that hate. Since reporting about the swastikas, an anti-Black racial slur found in the high school bathrooms, we have heard from parents and community members who are understandably concerned and angry. Some thanked us for our quick communication and longstanding commitment to fighting hate in our schools, whereas others expressed frustration that it continues to happen and want to know more about what actions are being taken and what penalties would be imposed. We recognize that words matter and actions often speak louder than words. In this instance, we're using both to try to bring an end to these acts of hatred. Communicating about these despicable incidents can be challenging. We do our best to choose the appropriate language to convey our strong condemnation and to inform as to actions taken. At the same time, we choose not to share all of our security protocols to avoid possibly compromising an investigation or student confidentiality. However, in all cases, I can assure you that we work closely with our partners in law enforcement to investigate these matters thoroughly, and we are prepared to impose the harshest consequences according to our student code of conduct. Over the course of the week, I've communicated or met with several groups and organizations who stand ready, willing, and able to lend their expertise and support to our efforts. I look forward to the opportunity to work closely with them in the weeks, months, and even the years to come. I'm also grateful to all who came together to issue a joint statement against hate in our community. Our united front gives me hope, as does a recent article written by the student staff of the Westfield High School newspaper, the High's Eye, which calls for greater action and transparency from district administration while recognizing the students' role in effecting change. To close my comments tonight, I will share the final words of the High's Eye statement, which powerfully states, "We have the power to change the culture. Let's stand together." Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. That was really important, and I know the community will hear it, and I hope we will continue to move forward and do what we can to eradicate this kind of hate in our community. Moving on, I just want to highlight that the structure of our meeting agenda has changed. Tonight is the first night that we are changing the structure of the agenda in accordance with a policy that we approved at our last meeting for the second time. We tried to talk about it then, but realizing that people come meeting to meeting and don't necessarily follow them all as closely as we do, I just want to highlight what we're going to do next. And this part is a little bit new. We're going to be going through the board committees, and each board committee chairperson will give a brief report as to what's happened with their committee since our last meeting. Part of what we're going to be doing with that is we're going to be previewing what agenda items coming up in each of those sections we will be voting on or taking action on. So that's what we call an action item. The other change that we made as a result of that policy is that our first public comment portion of the meeting, we have always said that that is a time to talk about agenda items only, and then the second public comment portion that comes later in the meeting is a time for members of the public to comment on any item. That second public portion remains the same. What we're asking, what we're going to be doing starting tonight is that during the first public comment portion, we need you to identify which agenda action item you would like to make a comment on. And if what you would like to comment on is not an agenda action item, we need you to hold that comment until the second portion of the meeting. Now, we know that that's a change, and some things might be a little murky and hard to figure out, so we're going to try to work together and make it as clear as possible. At our last meeting, we had someone who got up to speak on an item that we weren't taking action on. I asked her I clarified, was that what she wanted to speak about? And she said yes, and I said, okay, not now, but in the second portion. So if we say that to you, it's not because we don't want to hear what you're saying, it's because we want to be able to hear from members of the public on items that we're voting on. And then after we've done the voting, then we'll hear from you on whatever you'd like to talk to us about. So I hope that's clear. I know it's a change, and I know that it's different. So we will try to keep things moving so that everybody has a chance to get to what they want to say and when they'd like to say it. I don't know if any of you, if you have a copy of the agenda in front of you, just to give you a sense, we're going to be taking reports from curriculum, facilities, finance, long-range planning, negotiations, policies, technology, and communications. Not necessarily all of those will have a full report, but they'll give you a preview of what items will be later in the agenda, okay? And my report comes first. I'm the chair of the Curriculum, Instruction, and Programs Committee. We had our last meeting on November 18th, and then we also had a follow-up meeting on December 2nd. The meeting on December 2nd was sort of a separate meeting to take advantage of speaking with a teacher on an item that had been on our agenda in November and will be on our agenda again tonight. The full meeting on the 18th of November, we met with supervisors of several of the different areas, practical arts supervisor, English supervisor, social studies supervisor as well. And on the curriculum agenda coming later in the meeting, we will be approving for first reading curricula that we talked about at our last meeting, which are elementary world languages. So we heard from Enrique Pinkay at our previous meeting. We had 3 new practical arts classes, which we will be voting on tonight for a second reading: Introduction to Architecture, Architectural Design 2, and Computer-Aided Design. The second item we're voting on tonight is for first reading 2 practical arts courses at the high school, Business Principles and Management, and Introduction to Marketing. Introduction to Marketing is a new class, and Business Principles and Management has been restructured as well, so that was kind of new and interesting for the curriculum committee people to hear about. Whenever there's a new course, there's always a little bit of a rearrangement in terms of, where do we anticipate the students who want to take this class will not be taking other classes in the same area, for instance. An Introduction to Marketing sounds like it could be really interesting for some of our high school students who are very conscious of their brand. Interesting topics for me. My kids are older. So I thought that was really insightful. And then we had the ability to talk with the English and Language Arts supervisors about concerns that were raised at our last meeting about one of the resources for the American Studies curriculum, which we are voting on this evening. Specifically, it is The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. A parent who spoke at our last meeting had filed a formal complaint, which we will be addressing during the curriculum portion of the meeting. At this point, we do not anticipate voting on it. So that is not an item that we are taking public comment on. We will take public comment on the American Studies curriculum, which is something we are voting on tonight. So I think it was insightful for us to be able to talk to the teacher and the supervisors. That particular book has been used since at least 2007 in American Studies. That's when that curriculum was developed. There are any number of discussions that are held with students, and it was really insightful to hear from the teachers and the administrators' perspective on how they prepare students for any controversial topic or potentially difficult resource material that might be used. The students in question are juniors and seniors in high school. I think Many people who send their children to our school are hoping that they will be prepared for life at a good college, and that is what we are preparing them for in the high school. But the kinds of processes and conversations that are held with students, I think it was really helpful for committee members to hear about that. Does anybody else on the committee have any comments they want to make about that particular discussion?
Just because we're starting a new process,
Yeah.
is the discussion about the actual class now or later?
If there's anything that you'd like to comment on from the meeting, how about let's do that now? But when we want to address the actual item that we're voting on, there will be a time to do that during the curriculum agenda as well. Okay.
Just say, as someone who's on the committee, is that it's really valuable to have teachers and administrators at these meetings who give us a perspective of experts and what is the tremendous amount of work that's entailed and how they draft the curriculum, the different rules and policies they have to follow that are dictated in large part by the state, and also just really understanding the depth of their expertise. One of the advantages we have at Westfield is we are able to recruit and retain some of the most experienced teachers in the state. And so that's something that I just think is important I wanted to note that, put that on the record, and let just the parents know, because it's something you really don't realize until you're on the board of just how fortunate we are to have teachers that are that seasoned and that have that depth of expertise.
One point, I'll reserve comments on the issue later, but as far as the committee itself, I wanted to make clear that one of the points that one of the teachers made is that in all the years that the book has been in the district, there's never been a single complaint. There's never been a single issue with the book. And so when it came to this item being brought up, and unfortunately I was not at the last board meeting, that there was no need to raise the book because there's never been an issue with the book. So they were very clear on that, and they made it a point that they've also said, as you stated, that there are mechanisms in place that if a student would potentially have an issue or feel comfortable about any particular issue, that there are ways of dealing with that. And as a class that is geared towards juniors and seniors, they encourage the students to speak up for themselves and to act as adults in the sense that they can, if they have an issue or feel uncomfortable, they do encourage the students to say something, as opposed to just relying on the parents. But just want to make clear that there's never been an issue raised by the book, so that it's never been brought up in the past.
Just to go to piggyback onto what Rob says, and just because there hasn't ever been an issue raised before doesn't mean that people aren't entitled to raise their concerns. But I thought it was very helpful to speak with the teachers who have taught the course, speak with people who are really experts in the area of curriculum and in the area of the English language and literature. But I think what I thought was especially clarifying, and I think was really helpful, and I think Sahar had brought up that maybe having Gwen Thornton come back again, and to specifically talk about this, about the process, that if you do have a concern, you are of course welcome to voice it, but that there are steps that you need to take in a procedure that needs to be followed in order to appropriately address them, because sometimes you can have an answer, sometimes you can get a solution or an alternate approach just by speaking to the person that you're directly dealing with. So I think that was very helpful, and also not having to do with that specific book. And I meant to touch base with you after. I love that Warren Haynes was talking about how there are all these courses that, our kids don't take all of them because you can only take so many. And I'm always asking, well, what does this fall under, and what class is this? And he said that they're going to be doing almost like like a little video of each class and kind of explaining for the kids and the parents as they're entering the high school, which I think, is amazing because it's like this three-dimensional glimpse of what Westfield High School has to offer. And so, yes, that's a humanities course, but also, what is child growth and development and all the things. And I think that was really helpful. Also seeing how they're making changes to educate everybody what we have to offer and what your choices are. So I thought that's one of the best parts about the curriculum committee, is learning about things that you wouldn't learn, because I don't know that my kids will ever take some of these classes.
Okay, and then the other two items that are actionable items under curriculum for tonight are several district field trips and an overnight field trip, and are fortunate to have intern and student-teacher candidates for next school year. So in the interest of keeping things moving along, I'll stop my report now. I will hand it over to Mike to give a report for the Facilities Committee.
And I'm going to hand it off to Brendan. I was traveling actually last meeting, so I asked Brendan to just provide a report of what occurred at the meeting.
Happy to provide the report, Mike. The committee met on November 19th. Tara, Gretchen, myself met with Dana and our facilities director, Sean MacArthur. We started off talking about the Edison Field project, and we decided that it was important to meet with the town and individual board members, groups of board members, to discuss the real reservations we have with the project. Not saying that we won't proceed with the project, but the town needs to be clear that there are obstacles that need to be solved before we're ready to sign on to their proposal. Amy and I then met with the town last week, and they were amenable to the conversation. More to follow on that.
Right. But not...
Yes.
But we're not taking action tonight.
Oh, there's absolutely no action on Edison Field tonight.
Right.
Or in any of the meetings coming up. When there is going to be action, it will be announced ahead of time.
Good, thanks for clarifying.
We'll announce anything, at least a meeting ahead of time, if not further. We moved our conversation on to full-day kindergarten. The committee discussed the timing issue of the bond referendum and a separate proposal for the operating budget. We reviewed the impact of the 2% cap, all issues that we've been talking about since we started talking about full-day kindergarten. And the committee recommends that the board can't move forward with full-day K without addressing the structural problems with the budget first. That's a much larger conversation than the facilities committee can have. We have no recommendation as a facilities committee for that. We then moved on to facilities planning. The administration is touring each school with the architect in order to generate a comprehensive list of needs, wants, and wish list items from each building principal to address classroom size, program offerings, and special ed program abilities, so that we can come together with a master facilities plan, looking 5, 10, 15 years into the future. That's a big conversation, and will be tied into our strategic plan as a district, but we're getting the groundwork going on that before we get to that stage. And lastly, we had a proposal from the Westfield Soccer Association to renovate the field at Elm Street. They want to replace the topsoil, reseed, install irrigation, and manage the field. With that, they'd like some priority. They'd like priority access to the field. We asked Sean MacArthur to look into the water source available on the field. Allegedly, there was a water fountain at one point. We don't believe that will be adequate for their irrigation needs. So once we have an idea of what's going on there, we'll be able to inform the soccer association, and they'll tell us if they're interested in proceeding. Installing irrigation is going to be the most expensive part of their project. We also decided that no matter what happens on that field, the Westfield Y Men's Club needs to be able to maintain their access for their Christmas tree sale. That's been going on since at least the 40s, if not before that. and that's a tradition we don't want to upset, regardless of what happens with the field. Our next meeting is this Friday.
Okay, all right. So, any actionable items for facilities this evening? As far as hearing public comment?
Apologize for that.
No, that's okay. Again, we're working on it.
Yeah. There are no action items for facilities that fall under facilities. There are some that fall under finance.
Finance, okay. So we'll hear about those.
Can I just follow up on
Absolutely.
the facilities committee report?
Yep.
I appreciate the action on Edison Field tonight, but it's the last time I'm going to have an opportunity to say something, so I'm going to say it. I think that to date, we have been, as a board, intentionally letting the town take the lead so that they could present and sort of flesh out the project that they believed that they wanted to conduct on our property, right? And I think that we've heard enough now that that it's time for us as a board to really, for y'all, to really think about what the parameters of what you would even be willing to accept are. I think we can drive the bus a little bit now that we've heard sufficiently from the town what their intention is, and certainly we've heard plenty from the community about, I think we understand and appreciate the need. I think we also understand and appreciate the concerns with the current proposal. So I would just really encourage you guys to, as a group, figure out what the parameters are that we would even be willing to engage in conversation with the town. And rather than sort of this protracted conversation about what could be, if we have some limits, let's define them now. And then hopefully it'll help you guys get to resolution a little bit sooner. So that's all I want to say.
Just to clarify. All right. Report from the Finance Committee. Rob?
Yes, thank you. We met as a committee last Thursday, December 9th, and we discussed a number of issues that will not be actionable, but I'll go through those first, and then I'll talk about some action items. So we talked a lot about the health insurance. As we've discussed in the past to this body, health insurance costs have been continue to run very high. And Dana has done diligent work with Brown & Brown and other advisors to keep us apprised of what our abilities are this year and next year, and looking at what potential issues there may be in terms of a shortage this year and for significant increases possibly next year. So that continues to be an ongoing conversation, which then also relates to the budget. As Brendan hinted at, we did look at a number of issues, and when we're looking at the budget for next year, there's a very serious likelihood that we will need to look at reductions in programs to get to the cap for the 22-23 year. So a lot of work needed to be done and a lot of discussions to be had on that, and anything from insurance to transportation issues, which we've talked about. Just the school districts in this state are in a terrible state in terms of dealing with buses, a combination of some of the newer federal regulations and other issues going on. It's made it very, very difficult for districts to deal with transportation issues. We also talked about an issue that was brought up in previous meetings, which was the Westfield Education Grant when it came to the diversity training. We discussed the issue as to whether or not the board or the Finance Committee felt that there was anything that we need to do to change the process or to go back to anything that we did at that point. And the committee was in agreement that the actions that were taken are within our policies. We also talked about ESSER 3 funds, and we're looking to maintain additional staff that was added this year using those grant funds. Again, it's all connected back to the budget, and everything goes back to the budget. And so that'll also be a continuing conversation in terms of the ESSER 3 funds. On a positive note in dealing with the budget, we also talked about the Clean Energy Grant Program, which was just announced by the state a couple of weeks ago. And so the district is going to look to participate and apply for some clean energy funds, which is being pushed through the Board of Public Utilities, the BPU, and that would help pay for Phase 2, the HVAC renovations as we go forward. We also, this is an action item that's coming up. We did talk about electronic bid platform. There was a recent law that changed that allows school districts now to look at accepting electronic bids, especially helpful to Dana when it comes to construction and when we're dealing with contracts in that area. So there is an action item tonight where we're going to look to award a bid to, a contract rather, to BidNet Direct to use their bidding software at no cost to the board. And we'll look to also revise the board regulation regarding purchases subject to bid, since the current regulation references submitting bids in hard copy in sealed envelopes. As you could well imagine, government operates a little slow, and so some of the ways we function are pretty incredible when you think about it. I don't mean that in a good way. Probably 20 or 30 years behind technology, and there are certain ways that you have to submit documents to school boards, which could be different than the way you submit to county or local governments, and so we're definitely looking forward to taking advantage of the ability to accept electronic bids. Also, that one thing that we're going to deal with in the near future, which we talked about before, is RFPs as it pertains to legal services. So we're going to move forward with that next year, so you'll see that come up. And an actionable item that we discussed is the intent to award a contract under the National Co-op Purchasing Agreement. As we've talked about in the past, the school district, I think it's 6 or so different co-ops that we're part of, as well as the ability to utilize state contracting. State contract when it comes to accepting and putting out orders with certain types of bids. And so we're going to, the committee's recommending for advertising our intent to award a contract for tonight and awarding a contract to Hanover Research Group for January 18th, 2022. And I guess when we're talking about the agenda items, is that where I can do my usual recognizing monies that we receive? Great, perfect. Excellent. Thank you. We had a pretty full committee meeting.
There, yeah. Thank you. All right. Okay. Long-range planning, do you have a? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry, Sahar.
Again, tell me if this is the appropriate time or if it's later. I'm still learning, but I just wanted to ask a few questions or point out some things regarding when I read the description of the committee report. And I just think it's important to highlight this because I think that it's important for our parents to know this too. So it looks like based on the preliminary reports that the salary increases over the next couple of years will be from 3.1 to 3.2%. The out-of-district tuition is going to increase by 5%. The health benefits is estimated to increase by 7%. Then the transportation expenses are going to increase by 5%. However, we are limited, as a matter of law, from increasing our operating expenses by no more than 2%. So if we just do the math, we are going to spend less money on our students every year. And that's aside from whatever shortage we may have this year apparently because of the health expenses. And so I just want to, highlight what we all already know, but I think it's just really important to have the public conversation that our students are going to have less money spent on them, which means that's going to affect staffing, it's going to affect programs, it's going to affect quality of education. And as far as I'm concerned in my position, I think that is the priority for this district. This is what we should all be really trying to solve. So I thank the committee for all its hard work. I know Dana's busily trying to figure out how to pinch pennies, and Dr. Gonzalez is leading the charge, but this is really worrying. So I hope, we put our heads together and try to figure out ways to get more resources for our children, for our students.
Pinching pennies is helping you do better. Just a small correction. It's not our operating budget that can increase. So operating budget is tax levy plus state aid plus federal aid plus grants plus everything. Tax levy is just the locally funded portion. So, I mean, in Westfield, it's essentially the same thing because we get very small amounts in the other categories. But
Effectively, we can't. A lot more than 2%.
effectively,
We can't spend. Or we can't increase our spending, even though our expenses are going up, but it looks like from 3 to 5%. So we're spending less every year.
And we also are a district that does not spend a lot per student.
Yeah. I think
Already.
we're-
so there's no fat to trim.
There's nothing to trim. Okay, so that's something that I think all parents need to be really concerned about and thinking about.
His report, that the recommendation was that full-day kindergarten not be something that we're going to be able to be moving forward with right now. And I think that is something that is important to point out, because it's not because we don't want to move forward with full-day kindergarten. It's not because we're not trying to figure out how we can do it. It comes down to the fact that Westfield does not have the money for these extra things at this point.
Right, and that has been the case for... It was always going to rely on going to the community, but because there may be other elements that we need to be considering as well, that's the other reason to put a pause on moving ahead with, a two-phase bond for full-day kindergarten at this point.
It's
Yeah.
hard to ask for a new program when we're also existing. So we have work to do.
Right. All right. Is there a long-range planning report, Gretchen? There's
no report.
Okay, all right, okay, and so no actionable item there as well?
Correct.
Okay, just to clarify. All right, is there a negotiations report, Brendan?
There is. I can't say much, but...
Okay. Watch this space.
The negotiations team met with the Secretaries Union last week. We were optimistic that we would settle. I was cautiously optimistic, but we did wind up settling ultimately. We have a memorandum of agreement signed with the association. Both sides will approve salary guides in the coming weeks, and then when the board approves of the association salary guides, it will come to the full board for ratification.
Okay.
But I want to thank that association for sticking through. It was a long night. I believe we got out of there after about 5 hours. But it wraps up a 7-month negotiation. So thank you to the Secretaries Union and their NJEA rep for working with us and coming to an amicable agreement.
All right,
Yep.
great. Thanks for that report. So again, no action item for tonight. Policies?
Yep, I got another one.
Okay.
Policy Committee met on November 30th. Gretchen, Layla, and Sonal met with myself, Dr. Gonzalez, Barbara Ball, and Paul Panero. We started off talking about the calendar for the 22-23 school year. Worked through all the variables that go into forming that calendar. Start day is around Labor Day, the Jewish holidays in September, Teachers Convention in November, whether Election Day is going to be a school holiday or not. The plethora of half-days that have to fall in the fall for parent-teacher conferences, professional development days, etc. The placement of spring break, and then ultimately what the last day of school will be. We have a draft calendar that's been sent to the administrators and the WEA for their comments. We hope to have it on the January agenda.
Okay.
We then moved to creating an agenda for our new board member orientation. We have 3 brand new board members joining us in January, and we want to help them get acclimated and oriented as quickly as possible. So we put together an agenda for what we believe the most valuable reading materials and discussion points will be during Thursday's new board member orientation meeting. We also discussed doing a second orientation or reorientation for the board members that were elected last year. Starting off virtually, it isn't the same as the rest of us have experienced in meeting in person. The conversations that you get to have, the questions coming in and out of meetings, just wasn't there when we're all meeting virtually. So we want to make sure that everybody, new and existing board members, have all the tools they need to be successful board members. We then moved on to Policy 7441, and this is the Memorandum of Understanding with the Westfield Police Department. This is something we approve every year. The only change this year is the access rights that we're going to be giving our police departments to the video surveillance systems we have. Under the existing system, when the police need something, even in a true emergency, they have to call the superintendent's office. Superintendent connects them with IT. IT gives them a temporary password to log in, or somebody has to physically drive over to the police department with a laptop to allow them to have access. That's cumbersome and inefficient. We can trust our police department. So the superintendent has decided to allow the police department to have a username and password and software installed on the dispatch console and in the mobile command center in the event of an emergency, and there will be the ability to track and audit that. The police department can access our surveillance systems for outside use at any time, and during a true emergency, they can access cameras inside the building without having to request IT access. It's a change. It's a change I think is overdue. If we can't trust our police chief, we have a problem. Dr. Gonzalez, would you like to add anything else to that?
No, good, thank you. So the MOU. There we go. So the MOU is the Memorandum of Understanding that, as Mr. Galligan pointed out, is the means by which we identify what the parameters are for sharing information. I think it's important to note that while we trust our partners in law enforcement and they trust us to cooperate, the Memorandum of Understanding allows us to ensure that the privacy and security of our students are both balanced and protected. So the Memorandum of Understanding is written in order to give both the law enforcement and the school district that understanding. The document that is being presented for consideration to the Westfield Police Department is one that has been drafted by multiple entities. It's one that has been used in other districts, and it has been reviewed by our board council as well. And I believe provides the appropriate balance of security and access when necessary, but also the restrictions so that we are not in any way compromising student security. So that MOU is not up for approval this evening. The MOA, which defines the other parameters of operation between law enforcement and the school district is. But when the MOU is up for approval, I will definitely provide additional details and summary as well.
Thank you for that clarification. Student privacy is always a top concern of ours. Sometimes it's built into everything we do so much that I don't even think about it sometimes. Because I know it's being handled at the highest levels appropriately. Now moving on to action items. For the policy and legislation agenda, we have two motions. One is to approve for second readings the policies that we approved for first reading at our last meeting. It's 1648 school employee vaccination requirements. This is a state mandated policy. It's brand new. 2425, emergency virtual or remote instruction programs. This is also a new policy, and it is also mandated by the state. It more or less codifies the virtual and hybrid programs that we've been using last year in the event we have to ever shut down again for a health emergency. We'd hope to never have to use it, but now it's a policy, and we will update it as necessary as technology evolves. 7551, sexual harassment of students. This is a complete replacement of the existing policy we have, using the model policies and best practices from our subscription services. 6160, grants from private sources. This is a revised policy. Again, for second reading, we discussed the changes at our last meeting. And then our second item is second reading to repeal policies 1648, restart and recovery, 1649, Federal Families First Coronavirus Response Act, and 1650 remote learning. These were temporary policies in response to executive orders. Those executive orders have since expired, and we can reclaim the policy numbers. And now for our first ever governance agenda. where most of these items would normally have been under policies. They didn't quite fit under policies. That's why we changed the structure of the agenda, because they're not a policy item. It was just they didn't have a home before, now they do. So our first item is to affirm the superintendent's decision and HIB items from our last executive session, the school self-assessment HIB grades, the memorandum of agreement, not the memorandum of understanding, between the Westfield Schools and Westfield Police Department, and then the 3 resolutions honoring our retiring board members. And our next policy agenda, our next policy committee meeting is not until January of next year.
Okay.
One last. In response, this was not part of our committee meeting, but it is going to be on our next committee agenda. In response to the vandalism incidents, swastikas and other hate graffiti, I have taken a first revision attempt at our code of conduct, severely increasing the penalties for hate-based and biased offenses, along with escalating the penalties for our most severe offenses, weapons offenses, sexual violence, arson, things that are truly crimes. And we need to differentiate between somebody scribbling something on the wall and somebody scribbling a message of hate on the wall. And we need, the board takes it seriously. The only thing the board can do is policy, and the only policy we can really impact is our code of conduct. Increasing the maximum penalties for such offenses is something I believe the board needs to take action on, and I will refer it to the committee, and we will address it in January.
The code of conduct.
First reading tonight because it has not yet been by administrators or the attorneys. But it is something that will be on a near future agenda.
And was discussed with a great sense of urgency.
Yes, yes.
And we do take it seriously, and we do think it's important, but it's also important to make sure that that the proper authorities are consulted to make sure that what we're putting in our policy is something that can be followed and something that is actionable. So,
yes. Literally 15 minutes after I heard of the email going out to parents, I pulled the policy out and started revising it. 1 is bad, 2 is a trend, and we need to get in front of it.
All right. So again, no action on that item tonight?
Nope.
But it will be coming?
Yes.
Yes, great. Okay. Technology and communications, Gretchen, do we have a report?
There's no report. There's a meeting of the committee this Friday at 8 a.m.
Okay. All right, great. Okay. And I think we have come to the end of the report of committee reports. So now we are coming up on our first comment portion. As you'll recall from previous meetings, we do 2 public comment portions. I'm going to read a sort of a standard introduction to our first public comment portion, and then I'll kind of paraphrase a little bit just to make sure that we all understand. During this public comment portion of the meeting, district residents and staff are invited to address the Board of Education on agenda action items only, and I'll review that at the end. The board requests that individuals state their name and address for the record, which we have required before, and also to state the specific action item they are commenting on during this comment portion. We also ask that all remarks be directed to the board president and not to individual board members or staff members. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking. Specifically, comments regarding personnel matters are discouraged and cannot be responded to by the board. Students and employees have specific legal rights afforded by the laws of New Jersey. The board bears no responsibility, nor will it be liable for any comments made by members of the public. If a matter concerning a district staff member is of interest or concern to a resident, the matter should be referred to the responsible building principal, superintendent of schools, or the Board of Education, either by telephone, letter, or email. Although the board may not respond to items raised during the public forum, all public comments will be considered. Please note that if any member of the public becomes disruptive during the meeting, the board president may terminate the participant's statement. Continued disruptions may result in removal from the meeting or adjournment of the meeting. Each speaker's statement will be limited to 3 minutes in duration. So again, when you come to the podium, if you could state your name and address and which item that we are going to be voting on that you'd like to make a comment on. If you're not sure, you can ask, and we'll let you know if it's something you can talk about now, or if it's something that should wait until later in the meeting. And I'm not sure how many people we'll have speaking during this portion of the meeting, but if we could sort of form a line along that side, if it looks like we have a lot of people who'd like to comment right now, that way I don't have to call you up and we don't have to wait for each other to walk through the cafeteria. So I hope that's clear. So if anybody would like to speak now, please come up to the podium. Okay, we're happy to help. It's the first time that we're doing this particular arrangement.
You guys are taking an actionable item on American Studies in general, right?
We are taking, that is an action item,
Okay.
yes.
So I just want to make a, Darren Composto, 929 Columbus Avenue. My son takes the American Studies class, and I don't know where everyone in this room kind of falls on it. He absolutely loves the class, and I would describe him, he's not a fully formed intellectual individual yet, but he's trending to the right of center, and not once has he felt indoctrinated, not once has he felt pressured. Even when he hears things that kind of are different than what he thinks, the class is open to discussion and comment and things like that. So I think it's a great class. It's been great for him. So just hopefully if people are going to talk about that class, they understand what's really happening in that class and what's going on in that class. That was all I wanted to say.
I don't know if I could talk about this. It's policy and legislation about the restart and recovery. I know it was in the agenda. It's 1648, 1649, basically. It's just about the COVID quarantining.
Yeah, those are policies we're temporary policies.
Can I address it?
They're action items.
So I just wanted to...
Name and address for the record.
Sorry. Emily Barker, 434 Longfellow Avenue. I just wanted to ask if there was, or I guess to let you know that the Township of Middletown has recently revised their protocol so that they're much more equitable to healthy students in regard to quarantining. So what they're doing is, I'll just read a couple of them. They're identifying close contacts of COVID-19 positive individuals. They're notified of their status as a close contact. But then the individuals they're saying shall not be excluded from work, or school rather, but may voluntarily be excused for self-quarantine. Students who voluntarily self-quarantine due to being identified as a close contact shall be eligible for supplemental instruction up till 10 days. So basically what they're saying is that you can have the option of testing, but then you don't have to quarantine if you're negative. So all these kids, and I'll say my third grader has already quarantined multiple times now. He's been negative the entire time. It's really hard for these kids to be remote. I know that goes up through middle schools, high schools, different levels of remote instruction. It just might be worth considering, because if these kids are healthy and they're not spreading, they're not sick at all, I think that it would be a good thing to just review the protocols so that we're not denying the rights of the healthy students to attend school.
Hi, my name is Dr. Stephen Gorlick. I'm at 837 Carlton Road, proud 20-year resident of Westfield. I'm here to strongly support the proposal for the American Studies course as it now is written about in the agenda. I know that there have been all sorts of side issues brought in, and I've listened to the discussion. I want to tell you I'm here for a few simple reasons. I meant to mention that I'm distinguished lecturer in criminology at Hunter College, specializing in violence, active shooting incidents and such. I'm former assistant dean of the School of Education at Columbia and former vice president of the CUNY PhD granting institution. I'm here because, setting aside all the politicized parts of this, one, the course as I see it does not dilute the overwhelming consensus that many institutions are organized in ways that allow racism and ethnicity loathing to continue and persist. And that this class is, it seems to me, to be an inquiry into how that might be eventually stopped and changed and evolve over time. I'm also here to say that as I see it, although we'll be watching, it also does not shy away from using broad literature, scholarly literature, and literature to illustrate some of the points. A very rigorously designed course that would immediately pass the doctoral curriculum committee of any university I know of. Most specifically, though, I'm here about this business of discomfort. I've heard a lot, and I'm very sensitive to students who are uncomfortable in classes. I had a reputation at the university of teaching probably one of the most uncomfortable courses that we had. And it does have to do with sudden catastrophic violence, including active shooter incidents, all of the criminology theory and research that's been done trying to figure out how to deal with that horrible issue. It's involved looking at uncomfortable things. And I know that students do get uncomfortable. I just want to say a very simple concept, if I could. Education is, by its definition, profoundly uncomfortable, but it can be compassionately and rationally uncomfortable. When I hear students, parents talking about a child sitting in a class being, having something pointed out about that makes them feel uncomfortable, I empathize with that, even if it's not my political point of view. But if a teacher, as I learned to do over time, can face these in a compassionate way, that means getting to know students extremely well when the subject is sensitive, and getting to know what issues are especially difficult for students.
I'm sorry.
So that's it for me.
Okay.
I just want to say that discomfort is guaranteed, but it can be done compassionately and skillfully by a skilled teacher.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
My name is Charlotte Cohen. My address is 1605 Boynton Avenue, and I will be discussing the American Studies curriculum as well.
Great.
So I'm a senior here at Westfield High School, and I'm going to be reading a shortened version of the article I wrote last week for the Westfield Leader in regards to the objection of the bluest eye in the American Studies curriculum, titled "Stop Banning Books and Start Trusting Teachers." The main claim made by parents at the last Board of Ed meeting was that they wanted to ban this book from the American Studies curriculum in order to protect their children. But how is censoring and banning books any form of protection? If parents really wanted to protect their children, they would encourage the professional educators with adequate resources at Westfield High School to guide them through these discussions. A parent at the meeting stated, "When I was a student 20 years ago in this building, if I had read a book like this as a virgin, forced to read this filth, I would have been mortified and humiliated. Unfortunately, like a lot of young other young children in this world, the young girl in the book did not get to choose when she lost her virginity. The point of the book isn't to mortify or humiliate students. It is to facilitate a comfortable environment for students to learn from the horrors presented in the book. It is understandable that parents would be nervous when their children are being taught about sensitive topics like rape and pedophilia. Unfortunately, even if you are to ban the bluest eye from this curriculum, this won't be the only time these students would hear about these disturbing subjects. As an American Studies alumni, I can attest that the American Studies classroom was a safe space where I felt comfortable speaking about sensitive topics. These are discussions necessary before students leave the Westfield school system and head off to higher education on their own. What I found most alarming about the board meeting were the underlying tones regarding race and the ulterior motives in people's arguments. After an excerpt from the book was read, one parent said, "If I were to come in here as a grown man and express these as my desires, I would imagine I would probably be lynched." The parent went on to say, supposedly this book is supposed to cover the issue of blacks and the stuff they dealt with during the Great Depression. The stuff. Was it really necessary to use such insensitive and derogatory language in reference to the serious and real struggles of African Americans in American history? Another parent read an excerpt from the book containing the use of the N-word. She said she was surprised that this district has no regard for derogatory slang being used so outright. These points of contention don't seem to be about the graphic parts of the novel, but rather the topic of race in the book. It is important that students learn about the stuff that African Americans suffered through and the derogatory slang that was used to degrade African Americans. It concerns me how much parents want to shelter our student body from topics such as racism and rape, and it further concerns me how much parents underestimate the ability of our faculty to properly educate students on these important topics. I believe in the importance of free speech, public participation, and democracy in Board of Education meetings, but I beg that parents stop spewing racist ideology at these meetings and stop trying to censor real life. If you don't want your child to read The Bluest Eye in American Studies, then don't have them take this elective course. But please don't deprive other children of learning about these vital topics in our society.
That was awesome. Matt Van Dorsen, 512 Hort Street. I'm a high school social studies teacher in nearby Springfield. So I've been around this age group for the past 11 years, and there's two big mistakes I think adults make. And any adult, could be a teacher, could be a parent. One, that's forgetting what it's like to be. Yes?
So you're commenting about the American Studies?
Yes, I'm sorry. That's forgetting what it's like to be a child and underestimating the power of a child. Something like that was just read is just awesome. So when I teach history, I used to teach US 2, so basically the same course but without the literature component. I used to show a movie called Mississippi Burning. The movie is excellent. I'm sure most people saw it. It came out I think in 1988, and filled with lots of racial violence. The N-word is used a lot, the F-word is used a lot, and I want people to understand that we preface these things before they come into class. And I remember one girl said, I come from a Mormon family. I can't hear, we're not supposed to watch rated R movies. We're not supposed to do this. I said, sure, absolutely. Talk with your mother and father and see what you want to do, whether you want to step out when there's a bad scene or you want a completely different assignment. And she came back the next day and said, I watched the movie with my mother. She said it's great to be in the classroom. Upon hearing this at the last meeting, instead of my initial reactions of book banning, I bought the book and I read it. I didn't read it in high school. I finished it in 2 days. It's excellent. It's not about pornography. I bet you never thought you'd hear that when you guys ran for the Board of Education. It's about colorism. It's about self-worth. Major themes that a lot of children can sympathize with. So you may think that like colorism or underlying racism is not that much of a thing, but if you think of the Barbie came out in 1959, the black Barbie didn't come out until 1980. If you think of the O.J. Simpson trial, if you remember the picture of Time magazine and Newsweek being next to each other, the Time magazine picture being much darker. So imagine being an 11-year-old like the child in the book and saying, why did they make that look like me? Many of the people that we try to reach as children and we try to teach empathy, they're people that fall under the radar sometimes. And as we try and teach and try to reach these kids, there are so many kids that come through the doors of Westfield High School or any high school. They put on the nice face, maybe they have good grades, but they're screaming inside. So teaching a book like this and teaching controversy is something that needs to be done, and I know my time's up, but we can't put rose-colored glasses on our kids through high school and think they're going to be constructive members to society. So I appreciate the work that you guys did with the curriculum meeting and meeting with the teachers, and hope that we can trust our staff. We're one of the best districts in the state, one of the best states in the country, so of course we have outstanding English teachers and social studies teachers. So thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Andrea Marcus. I live at 504 Edgar Road. I'm taught here to talk about the American Studies course as well. I actually wrote you a letter a couple weeks ago. I think you all read it, so I'm not going to reread it again. But I just wanted to come up here, let you know I'm here, and kind of reiterate my support for the course as it's currently written, and say that, again, while I also agree that the subject matter is covered by many texts, not only in this course, but throughout the high school, curriculum can be challenging on many levels. I am confident that our well-trained faculty have the skill to help our students navigate through those difficult topics. And I hope that, you'll continue to support the faculty of our schools in Westfield and trust the texts that they choose. So thank you.
I'm Jim Shiner. I live at 609 Roosevelt Street. I have a daughter who's currently a sophomore in the high school, and I have a son who's in 7th grade at Edison. I've been an English teacher, a high school English teacher, for 35 years. I love my work. I care a great deal about my work. And I know that the value of literature, and I'm sorry, I'm speaking in support of the American Studies curriculum as it's written, and specifically the inclusion of the bluest eye. As an English teacher, I understand that the value of literature persists in the classroom, in the 21st century classroom, because it has a unique ability to imaginatively challenge young people to think in more complex and expansive ways. And I think that, in a nutshell, is the essence of what we hope and what we know our Westfield schools do for our young people, is to challenge them to make their minds more expansive, to think in ways that are not easy, but are ultimately more substantive and more fulfilling. The Bluest Eye is a remarkable book. It's a challenging book. It's a book that brings to the forefront the reality of racism, sexual violence, the power of social expectations to distort, warp, break down people and their lives. And it asks us, as Toni Morrison says in an afterword to the book, it asks us not just to be touched, not just to feel pity for these people, but to humanize them so that we can be moved by their experience and understand that experience and have a deeper and more profound sense of things that many of us may not experience, but ultimately are resonant to us on a human level. That's something that I would be thrilled every day for my students to walk out of my classes with. That sense, that ability to understand things that may not be familiar to them, that they may not initially have thought of. That's a remarkable thing. The one other thing I would say, if I were telling you that I were taking a group of students on a trip to Florence, and I showed you a picture that was a close-up of the genitalia of Michelangelo's David, and someone said, wait a second, you're taking them to view pornography. And then I showed you the full majesty of Michelangelo's David and its celebration of humanity and our beauty and what we are. I think you'd have a truer sense of what I was hoping to achieve by taking them on that trip. Thank you very much.
I'd also like to comment on the American Studies curriculum. My name is Ann Kelly. I'm at 207 Sinclair Place. And I'm reading from a letter from my daughter, who is a 2021 graduate of Westfield High School. We discussed this at Thanksgiving, and she felt compelled to write. I'll edit it as I go. About the bluest eye. I understand this book in and of itself is a difficult read. It was very challenging and uncomfortable, but I want the parents and the board to know that the in-class discussions that occurred after reading it led to a greater understanding on a personal and emotional level on the issue of race. These same issues have been unjustly hurting the African American community for decades, if not centuries. The graphic scenes presented in this novel are meant to serve the purpose to touch readers on a personal level and to create the understanding that these issues are not unique to the book itself. We face these issues as best we can through reading about it and can only imagine the experience of living it. We hopefully grow in our understanding of others through the difficult work of facing these harsh truths through fiction. It's also important to note that at Westfield High School, it's really important that students are made aware of racism and the atrocities that have occurred due to it. And Westfield High School is an amazing school and provides an excellent education. I see this now as a student at Fordham University, but the Board of Education and parents should know that universities expect their students to be educated on these very issues. I was very privileged to receive the education that I did in Westfield, but there's little opportunity for exposure to the African American community as a predominantly white town. Morrison's novel was one of the most significant texts that brought me to a greater understanding about it. I utilized my knowledge from that book alongside the whole education I received at Westfield High School to speak about these issues in college class discussions. It's my opinion that if you remove this book from the curriculum, you are putting future graduates at a disadvantage for both their college applications and the courses themselves. I hope for the students of Westfield High School you consider keeping this in the curriculum, and that hearing from a student's perspective will help create a better understanding of the positive effect that this book gave me. The high school has done an excellent job shaping its students into well-rounded individuals and continuing to have texts that speak to diversity and inclusion will, in order to raise and form adults. Thank you for your time.
Thanks. Kyle George, 605 Short Hills Court. I'm going to speak about the change to Policy 6160, grants from private sources. I spoke on November 16th about how I thought the proposed change to relax the rules on grants made it too easy for administrators to accept outside funds before the BOE gets a chance to review. I said how two particular recent grants didn't appear to follow the policy as it stands now, and thus it does not make sense to put more trust in administrators when they didn't appear to follow the policy as is. There was some confusion during the meeting about dates, but I presented evidence to Dr. Gonzalez and the BOE after that meeting that supports what I said. And I want to know, how can the BOE possibly justify this policy change in light of this concern, and what is driving the necessity? I urge the BOE to leave the policy unchanged and to take whatever corrective action is necessary. And I'd also just like to note that changing this policy to make it easier to accept grants from outside sources has been prioritized over revising the controversial issues policy. In March, a guest speaker made anti-Semitic comments calling Israel an apartheid state, and now we have repeated anti-Semitism in the high school. As a Jew, I find your response hollow.
Michael Pittman, and I'm at 264 Hazel Avenue. I pre-wrote something. I think while I was sitting, yes.
Which item are you?
The American Studies as well. Pre-wrote something, but while I was sitting listening to everyone's voice in support of the curriculum, which I also support, I thought of a quote that I saved on my phone. I'd like to read it. The very serious function of racism is distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. It keeps you explaining over and over and over again your reason for being. Somebody says you have no language, so you spend 20 years proving that you do. Somebody says your head isn't shaped properly, so you have scientists working on the fact that it is. Someone says that you have no art, so you dredge that up. Somebody says you have no kingdoms, so you dredge that up. None of that is necessary. There will always be one more thing. And I looked at the quote and I didn't realize it is Toni Morrison. I'm going to read a little bit of what I pre-wrote, the important part. I have two children, one at Lincoln and one at McKinley. While neither one of them is in high school yet, the issue is of the utmost importance to me. As you are all too aware, the calls for banning books here in Westfield are not happening in this vacuum. It is far from a coincidence that a small but vocal group of people in this town are trying to ban a book that has been taught in Westfield High School for much over a decade, but trying to ban the book at the exact same time that school districts across the country are facing similar disruptions at their Board of Ed meetings. Now, I'm incredibly sympathetic to any parent who wants what is best for their children and will fight like hell to get it. What I am not sympathetic to is an unpopular and out-of-touch political movement that uses racism, sexism, homophobia, and xenophobia to drum up votes. The calls for banning books or speakers is not some grassroots apolitical collection of concerned parents. It is also not a both sides at fault Democrat versus Republican political theater. This obsessive focus on any teachings dealing with sexuality or race is simply part of a well-organized, well-funded, purposeful misuse of Board of Education meetings, and it's happening across the country. Designed by far-right think tanks with the primary goal to misrepresent current curriculum to feed a narrative that there is some sort of culture war and only one political party can save them. And while these Board of Educating meetings are being hijacked for political purposes, it is the parents, teachers, and kids who are paying the price. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Joanna Sexton, and I'd like to speak in support of the American Studies curriculum as it stands right now. And the main way that I'd like to do that is just to pose a question to those who are saying specifically about uncomfortable conversations and just the act of sheltering in general. And I'd just like to ask how it's beneficial to shelter students from this now, but say that it's completely reasonable to have these conversations in 2 years when a student's maturity level hasn't changed that much. But in all reality, what will change is the educators who are in front of them. The class sizes are going to increase, and they're not going to have as much of a personal relationship with their teachers. So I'd like to ask if it's truly beneficial for these shelters, for us to shelter students from this now and to have conversations in a less personal manner 2 years from now when a student can't talk to their teacher as much for help. I don't think it's beneficial at all to shelter students from this, and I don't think it's going to stop the issue of perpetual racism when we just keep avoiding the problem. So all I'd ask is that we continue to teach a book which is educating on very uncomfortable topics with very educated teachers who we appear to keep underestimating, though we're who we hire to educate our students. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Camille Zimmerman. I live at Arenda Circle, 314 Arenda Circle, and I wanted to speak in favor of the American Studies curriculum as it stands right now because I am a student in the American Studies curriculum, and I can attest that the teachers are they're down to earth, and they will talk to you about uncomfortable subjects in a way that is palatable. And I think also that we need to have uncomfortable conversations. And as a former teacher of mine, Daniel Farival, said, we need to have uncomfortable conversations. And if you're uncomfortable, that's a good thing, because you need to be uncomfortable to know that we have to change. And I also wanted to speak that we have read books that involve sexual content in the past, and the people aren't calling for these books to be removed. And I feel that one of the main reasons people are calling to remove The Bluest Eye is because it involves race. And though the book that we read, Snow Falling on Cedars, also involved race, it did not involve Black people. And I feel that with the movement that happens now, Black Lives Matter, people are becoming increasingly uncomfortable with this. And I just wanted to say that the teachers they taught the book in a very good way, Snow Falling on Cedars. And I feel that if we do learn The Bluest Eye later in the year, that they would also teach that in a similar fashion that would be palatable for students. I also wanted to say that if you ban a book, kids are going to go straight to the library, pick out The Bluest Eye, and read the sexual scenes, because that's what they do. So, I don't see the point of banning it. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Susanna McLean. I'm at 8 Stanley Oval. I was not planning to speak today, but a few things that some folks said made me feel that I should come essentially in my professional capacity. I'm a college admissions counselor, and I work with students. This is about the American Studies course. My apologies. And I work with students on their essays all day, every day for about 5 months. It's almost over. And I've been noticing an interesting trend in the essay prompts that students are getting from colleges. I'll read one to you. This university culture fosters a community in which students challenge the ideas of others and have their ideas challenged in return, promoting a deeper and clearer understanding of the complex issues confronting society. This active engagement in dialogue is as present outside the classroom as it is in academic spaces. Tell us about a time you were challenged by another person. Now, that was from Brown University, and so you might say, well, Brown, they're kind of left-wing. You would kind of expect that from them, but let me read another one to you. A compelling characteristic of this community is that our students want to be actively engaged in learning their community and the world. Our students look to make a difference and have a real-world impact. We expect our community to challenge your viewpoint, your naturalized assumptions, and the way that you see the world around you. This university is committed to be an anti-racist institution. By this, we mean actively speaking out and addressing acts of racism, racist comments, racist practices, policies, and procedures. What would you want to be different in your own country or community to respond to issues of inequality, inequity, or injustice? This is from the hotbed of left-wing politics, Lehigh University in Pennsylvania. So it's not just a fringe thing. These are not the only examples I have. Lots of colleges want students who have thought about things deeply, challenged their own assumptions, had difficult conversations, and really, really thought about different perspectives and points of view. And we have to be able to teach students these things, and they need to learn these skills with our guidance. That's all I have to say.
Julie Steinberg, 109 Belmar Terrace. I'd like to speak in favor of the American Studies curriculum. I have been reading Toni Morrison for 30 years now, maybe a little longer. And I've read The Bluest Eye many times. I don't only think it's appropriate for the American Studies curriculum, but I'd have no problem it being a mandatory book for multiple English classes across the board at our high school. It's an excellent introductory book to her work, to her canon of work, to her Nobel Prize winning work. And I've struggled a little bit to understand why it has come to this. I understand some of the unoriginal thinking that brought it to the board, that it became a national issue that was circulated to discuss it, and it circulated, as one of the previous speakers did, down so that people were told to bring it to their local school boards, and they did, and it came to our local school board, and it sadly has wasted a lot of people's time and created a lot of unnecessary angst. What I'm most concerned about, though, beyond everything, is something that came up earlier, which is I'm very worried about our teachers. I'm worried about this in a climate where it's getting hard to find substitutes. I'm worried we're in a climate where the caseloads are so high, where everyone is just trying to get through every day. To have another thing like this circulating, and for them to worry, my God, are we living in a culture like Texas, or are we living in a culture where we're banning books, where we have people in our community who are so small-minded that that's what's going to be the substance, where my name might come up, or my class might come up, or my curriculum might come up, where teaching a Nobel Prize-winning author that's never been raised as an issue in my community, my high-rated blue school community, has ever come up. And I'm really worried that these people have undermined our schools and the institution that is this Board of Education. And I don't think that we should permit it anymore. And so I looked into the bluest eye for some reasons why this has happened. And I came back with this quote. You looked at them and you wondered why they were so ugly. You looked closely and you couldn't find the source. And then you realized that it came from conviction. Their conviction. It was though some mysterious, all-knowing master had given each one a cloak of ugliness to wear, and they each had accepted it without question. Thank you.
My name is Jill Baker. I live in Baker Avenue. This is about the class, the American Studies class. At the last board meeting, multiple parents read excerpts from The Bluest Eye. We had to divvy up the reading sessions. This is what we said to one another. Who's willing to read the incestual rape scene? Who will read the graphic sex scene between the rapist and his wife? Who's comfortable reading the N-word scene? How should we read that particular scene? And so on. The fact that grown adults had to have these discussions, that we were uncomfortable getting up and reading these excerpts in public, that some parents didn't want to read any excerpts out loud, should say something. It should mean something about the appropriateness of this book in a school setting. This book that describes in graphic detail a man's obsession with raping, lusting, and abusing children, including his own daughter. Do children need to learn that predators are in this world trying to corrupt the innocent, take away their moral compass, and groom them? Yes. Are children exposed to a ton of shows, online activities, music videos that carry similar or morally corrupt content? Of course. But why does a high school class full of teenagers have to read a book drenched in explicit and disturbing sexuality from the enjoyable viewpoint of the rapist? Where are the boundaries in school? Do they even exist anymore? Everybody keeps talking about this group of parents like we're well-funded and right-wing and we're come together, and it's like this horrific thing that we're doing. There's no funds, there's nothing going on. It's just a group of like conservative parents and residents that are coming together, and we want certain things to happen for our children in school. The great Thomas Sowell once said, the next time some academics tell you how important diversity is, ask how many Republicans there are in their sociology department. Pride in our country as a place where our values and rights are protected, pride in our founding documents, family is a foundation for our children, hard work, a strong moral compass. These are some conservative values that I try to instill in my children, and that I'd like the schools that they go to also instill. Our children deserve to have an education where their minds are open to all sides of the world, where they're free to decide for themselves what their priorities and their goals in life should be. In order to do that, these children need to be exposed to all sides of the spectrum. Malcolm Forbes once said, education's purpose is to replace an empty mind with an open mind. Open one. Are schools currently shaping their students to have open minds, to think for themselves and go against the grain where their conscience tells them to? Or are they being taught to fall in line, not disrupt the status quo, and not think for themselves, or they're going to be labeled? It's pretty maddening that the latter is currently taking place. I won't be teaching my children those values. We have a lot of questions, and the trend of this district is to ignore us and hope that we will go away. I'm hopeful that will change in the coming year. I don't envy this board. I think you have your hands full with the rollout of the new sex education agenda, and I think the rising up of parents in this town and in this country to protect their own children is just getting started. Thank you.
Hi. Curdy Malik, 238 Grove Street. I just want to start off by saying thank you for the opportunity to speak and also for your patience in hearing us tonight. And also, I'm very heartened to see that you're hearing, I think, what the majority of this town feels, which is a very pro-education agenda. I'm here to just comment very briefly on the American Studies topic. And really, I just came up here to read a quote by Meg Medina, which I thought was just basically said it all. So I just want to read that. To pull books from a school library or classroom because of the discomfort they create in adults is a recipe for disaster. It erodes the trust young people have in the adults in their lives and pushes them to secrecy. It undermines the studied opinion of professional librarians and teachers and educators. It supports a false idea that there is only one version of life that is acceptable, and it denigrates the work of authors who are brave enough to name experiences that are difficult and real. So I just want to say, I am not a teacher. Most of us, except, there were several teachers who spoke, but most of us are not teachers. I moved to Westfield for really one reason only, because I was told this is where you will find the gold standard in teachers. So if anyone can help my kid digest such a novel and other difficult works, I trust it'll be our excellent English department and history department, and I think we should all just let them do their job. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jean Marie Ryan. I've lived in Westfield since I was 6. I'm sorry to say I'm not a graduate of Westfield High School, but I've watched the education you've provided the children in this community for decades. It's the gold standard. I'm also here because I'm a public librarian, and as a librarian, I fully support the American Studies curriculum. I want to start with something that a colleague of mine said to me today. A book written by a Nobel Prize winner on the topics of obsession with beauty, conformity, race, class, and gender could not be more relevant or appropriate. I couldn't agree more. As someone who's worked with teens for most of my professional career, and as a library director who works in a majority-minority community in Union County, I can't tell you how sad it made me that the town I grew up in is even having this discussion. I'm going to be honest, I'm torn between sadness and rage. I cannot believe this. And the other incidences that you described of what's been found in the bathrooms, this isn't the town I grew up in. This isn't the town that I love. I don't have children. I took something really big to make me come here tonight, and I appreciate your time in listening to me. So I just want to finish up with a couple of quotes. I thank you for your patience. This is a quote by Jacqueline Woodson, who I think knows a little bit about being banned herself. I think it's so important that if I'm writing about the real world, I stay true to it. I think that kids do compartmentalize, and they're hopefully able to see it from a safe place of their own lives, and through that, learn something about empathy. The whole point of literature and having these discussions in a place where people can share their emotions is to teach empathy, but beyond that, it's to teach resilience. I was a product of this sheltered world, and I am so glad that I read as copiously as I did. And I think I'm also here in honor of Mrs. Ocasio, who is no longer with us, who defended my reading to my mother all the time. But you just need to know that you're doing your children no service by overprotecting them. You're hurting them, because someday the real world will intrude. So I want to end with one last quote, which is by Toni Morrison. Make a difference about something other than yourselves. And I thank you all for being here, because no one who serves on any kind of elected board or appointed board wants to go through what you've all been going through. And I appreciate your time, and I appreciate what you do for this community. Thank you. I'm sorry. One last thing. The students who spoke tonight are a credit to what this educational system does. And I will say, I just came from a dinner where, to the young woman's point about they'd go to the library and check it out, a prominent attorney waxed poetic about how she read Lady Chatterley's Lover and all the dog-eared pages from her brother's book. So come on, let's get real, people.
All right. All right. Thank you, everyone, for taking the opportunity and for trying to follow our new rules of sticking to agenda topics for this portion of public comment. We really appreciate it. I think sometimes we take a moment to pause and make comments. Would you like to?
Sure. Just in response, there's an inquiry regarding our quarantine protocols related to the one of the policies being repealed this evening. Just to reiterate, the work of the district in making decisions around COVID-related matters are made in conjunction with our health department, our district physician, our nurse coordinator, as well as any of the prevailing guidance made available by the New Jersey Department of Health. I am hopeful and optimistic that in the coming days we are going to see updated guidance by the New Jersey Department of Health for schools in light of the availability of vaccines now for school-age children 5 and up. So I'm hoping that we'll have additional details that will allow us to advance our work in being able to keep our students in schools as much as possible, while also keeping our students and staff safe in the process. So I could certainly tell you that we review our quarantine protocols regularly and frequently, and we'll continue to do so. With regards to the comments shared by American Studies in support of or in sharing concerns about some of the resources related to the American Studies course, I just want to really underscore the importance of public comment, because it is the opportunity for the board and the administration to hear the concerns as well as the support of our community. It is important for us because we do not want to just move forward blindly without taking an opportunity to reflect on what we do and why we do it. The last thing you will ever hear from this superintendent is we've always done it this way, so that's why we've done it. So even the fact that we've been able to attest to the use of materials or the teaching of a course for years doesn't mean that we shouldn't take a moment to pause and look at whether or not it's the right thing for our students and the right thing for this community. So I do want to thank everyone for their feedback on in whatever form that it is shared. I do want to reinforce the fact that we do read, we do listen, and we do consider that in our decision making. So thank you for everyone in that regard.
Sure.
Yeah. I wanted to just go back to looking at the policies to have more severe repercussions and penalties for hate crimes. And I wanted to say, I'm not speaking for the board, but I mean, myself, I am very much in favor of that. And one of the constituents said that there is a correlation with our guest speaker and the swastikas. And in fact, I don't believe, and I'm sure with your photographic memory, I don't believe that that's accurate. I believe the swastikas have existed on the bathroom walls and other places in this town before that speaker. And while they're, it doesn't matter why they're there, it's not appropriate, it's not okay that they're there. I think it can't be blamed on this one speaker when the world is more of a divisive place than it was. I just wanted to say that for the record, that I don't think that that speaker coming is because there were anti-Israel comments, doesn't mean that they were anti-Semitic comments. Speaking as a Jew, I didn't feel that, I felt that that distinction needed to be made.
And you're absolutely right. Some may be new, but many are in fact years, if not decades old. Over the last couple of years, we've seen them scrawled into the sidewalk near Wilson, carved into playground equipment at Mindawaskan Park, carved into trees at Tamaquas Park, scrawled on probably every bathroom in every middle school and high school. One was found recently, I'm told, somebody saw a scratch behind a toilet paper holder and the custodian removed it and found it. So unless the kids have the special screwdrivers to take off the security screws, that's been there so long that it was covered up at some point.
And it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
When it happened, it matters that it's happening and it's continuing to happen and that we need to address it as intensely as we can. But I think we also need to look at the bigger picture than this is because of a speaker.
Correct.
It's the appropriate time?
Let's do it when we get to curriculum. I think.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, all right. And I would just like to say thank you to our students who turned out. To echo Dr. Gonzalez, we do value public comment. We really value seeing students coming and sharing their time. We know how busy everyone is, but particularly students at our high school. And so just know that it's really important, and you've all really eloquently spoken for yourself and supported your positions, and we take great pride in that, although, of course, your parents are probably largely responsible for that. But here's hoping that our teachers, their gold standard teachers, are helping with that as well. So thank you for that. All right, so we keep referring to action items, and we should probably move along so that we can get to them. So I would like the board to approve the minutes of November 16th, 2021, the board meeting minutes, and the executive session minutes also from November 16th, 2021. Could I have a second, please? Thank you, Leila. All in favor of approving the minutes? Aye. Any abstain? You're going to abstain?
Unavailable.
All right, yep, okay. All right. So moving on to board action agenda. We're actually doing it slightly differently than the order of the committee reports, but we're going to start with action on governance items. Brendan?
Yep, as I mentioned in my governance policies report, we have 6 action items under governance. So I'll ask the board to affirm the superintendent's decision in HIB incidents 22E02 and 22HS02 for the reasons set forth therein. Can I have a second? Second. Thank you, Rob. We can't debate this, so Dana?
Sahara, please. Yes. Mike Phelan?
Yes.
Brenda Galligan?
Yes.
Rob Garrison?
Yes.
Leila Morales? Yes. Gretchen Oleg? Yes.
Amy Root? Yes.
Thank you. I ask the board to approve governance items numbers 2 and 3. This is to approve the submission of the 2020-2021 school self-assessment for HIB grades, and they are attached. It's a 59-page report. And approve the 2021-2022 memorandum of agreement between the Westfield Board of Education and the Westfield Police Department, and it is attached as well. Have a second? Thank you, Leila. Any questions on either of those? Dana?
Sahara Aziz? Yes. Mike Phelan?
Yes.
Brenda Galligan?
Yes.
Rob Garrison?
Yes.
Leila Morales? Yes. Gretchen Oleg? Yes. Amy Root?
Yes.
And lastly, I ask the board to approve governance items 4, 5, and 6. These are resolutions honoring Gretchen Oleg, Rob Garrison, and Tara Oporto for their years of service to the district. Thank you, Leila. Dana?
Sahara Aziz? Yes. Mike Phelan?
Yes.
Brenda Galligan?
Yes.
Rob Garrison?
Yes.
Leila Morelli?
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg?
Yes.
Amy Root? I don't want to, but yes. I will accept, yes. Thank you.
That is it for governance.
All right. Great. Moving on to action on personnel items. I would like the board to consider personnel items 1 through 45. May I have a second? Okay, thanks, Brendan. I believe there's one item to be called out, Dr. Gonzalez, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. This evening, I am announcing with regret the retirement of Ann Fernari, a longtime paraprofessional at Roosevelt, and more recently a substitute paraprofessional in the district. Ann has supported dozens of students, assisting them with lifelong organizational skills and giving them positive reinforcement. Her professional, caring assistance will be missed, and we want to wish Ann a healthy and happy retirement.
Great. If there are no other comments or questions, Dana, we'll do a roll call.
Yes. Mike Beelan? Yes. Brendan Galligan? Yes. Rob Garrison?
Yes.
Layla Morelli?
Yes.
Gretchen Olig?
Yes.
Amy Root?
Action on finance and facilities items.
Thank you, Amy.
Mr. Garrison.
We have items number 1 through 24, and as is customary, I will highlight items number 17. Oh, let me get a second, please. Yes, thank you, Brennan. Thank you. Well, I could read and still get a second. It doesn't matter. So items number 17 through 20 is accept a donation of $2,000 from the Westfield Athletic Hall of Fame to contribute towards the purchase of an interactive touchscreen Hall of Fame and honor wall display for Westfield High School. Item number 18 is to approve submission of a Westfield Coalition for the Arts Grant application for the purpose of purchasing an Epson Sure Color inkjet printer benefiting the Westfield High School graphic design art students in the amount of $749. Item number 19 is submission of a Westfield Coalition for the Arts Grant application for the purpose of purchasing a ceramics drying cabinet benefiting the Edison Intermediate School art students in the amount of $1,677. And last one is item number 20, which is submission of a Westfield Coalition for the Arts Grant application for the purpose of purchasing 2 body microphones plus accessories benefiting the Edison Intermediate School drama students in the amount of $2,207.26. Definitely appreciate their continuing support of our various programs. Dana, roll call, please.
Zahara Aziz? Yes. Mike Beelan?
Yes.
Brendan Galligan? Yes. Rob Garrison?
Yes.
Layla Morelli?
Yes.
Gretchen Olig?
Yes.
Amy Root?
And just on that, I'd like to
Echo Rob's comments and thanking the Westfield Athletic Hall of Fame and the Westfield Coalition of the Arts for their continued support to many of our programs.
Action on policy and legislation items. Brendan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Policy and legislation items numbers 1 and 2. Thank you, Layla. This is to approve for second reading, policy 1648, school employee vaccination requirements, 2425, emergency or virtual instruction program, 5751, sexual harassment of students, 6160, grants from private sources, and approve for second reading the repeal of 1648, Restart and Recovery, 1649, Federal Families First Coronavirus Response Act, and 1650, remote learning. Any questions? All right, Dana?
Zahara Aziz? Yes. Mike Beelan?
Yes.
Brendan Galligan? Yes. Garrison?
Yes.
Layla Morelli?
Yes.
Gretchen Olig?
Yes.
Amy Root?
All right. And last but not least, action on curricular instruction and program items. As I outlined before, we have 4. Typically, I would kind of introduce them all at the same time, but since we've had some reference to some comments, I think I'll start off with, I'd like the board to consider curriculum item number 1. Can I have a second? Thanks, Rob. Curriculum item number 1 is to approve for second reading curricula that we've discussed and approved previously at the table here, the Elementary World Languages program, the 3 practical arts classes, Introduction to Architecture, Architectural Design 2, and Computer Aided Design. Does anyone have any comments or questions about those items?
I just want to highlight that this is a part of our STEM program. I know there are a lot of parents who want us to have a stronger STEM program. I'm one of those parents, many of us on the board are among those parents. And, notwithstanding our budgetary problems, hopefully we'll continue to do that. But just wanted to highlight that this is a welcome, I think, addition for students who want to develop more of their STEM skills.
On that same note, I've been wanting these courses in Westfield High School for 20 years, and I'm glad we finally have the staff and resources to offer them to our students.
Right. The right staff, in a way. I mean, it's
the right
really...
staff with the right training and the willingness to extend these programs.
Yeah, not that we didn't have it before, but it sort of all came together, and that's the nice thing that you can see on curriculum is that, that we're not necessarily directing these things to be created. They are coming up from the teachers and from the administrators at our schools. So I think that's important.
And it's organic growth in that the intro to engineering courses feed into these courses, and we couldn't have these courses without the foundational courses that come before them, starting with the elementary and middle school curriculums.
Okay.
Yeah, just to echo what Sahar said, it's good that we're branching out into now the architecture area, and I hope to see us branching out into other areas. I know we've discussed robotics in the past, and just continue to expand the STEM offerings that we offer, because I see it in the workplace every day. There's such a great shortage of people with these skill sets that they can really help their careers going forward.
All right. Can we do a roll call on item number 1?
Yes. Mike Beelan?
Yes.
Brendan Galligan?
Yes.
Rob Garrison?
Yes.
Layla Morelli?
Yes.
Gretchen Olig?
Yes.
Amy Root?
Curriculum item number 2. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thanks, Brendan. Again, those are the interdisciplinary class of American Studies at the high school and 2 practical arts classes, Business Principles and Management and Introduction to Marketing. All 3 courses are being considered tonight for first reading. The American Studies class was considered and tabled at the last meeting. There was a little bit of a misunderstanding, I think, as to what that meant. It didn't mean that we were voting no on it at our last meeting. It meant that there were some questions, and we, as board members, wanted to take some additional time to make sure that we got answers to those questions. So we've alluded to that a little bit, but I have a feeling we have some board members who may like to make some comments. Yep, go ahead.
Can I just point of clarification? We are not discussing the report on the committee report on the complaint tonight? We are, okay. So I just wanted to share some of my thoughts. It's probably, I don't know if it's supposed to be public, but I was the board member who served on the committee that reviewed the complaint. So many things that I had written before coming tonight have already been said, so I want to try and be as succinct as possible. But so I read the book. It's a beautifully written book. Of course, I think we've all read it by now, and I read it relatively quickly. And I only point that out to say that that's one of the things that makes this book really unique. Is it's particularly accessible, and all of Toni Morrison's work is not necessarily as accessible. And so I think that I just wanted to raise that point. When I made the motion at our last meeting to table the vote on the American Studies curriculum, my intention was to allow board members the opportunity to ask questions and confirm what I already knew to be true. We need to trust the professionals. It would be foolish to think that this book, which has been in the Westfield High School book room since 2000, is being taught by educators who are not fully aware of its content and its power. They know how to navigate the content of the text, how to prepare their students for the difficult materials in advance, and there are sufficient safeguards in place to make sure that any students who may be triggered by the text are identified and allowed to opt out or pick alternative text. All of these procedures already exist. They've existed for many, many years, and they'll remain in place. As so many people have detailed tonight, this book really, truly is unique. The 3 or 4 pages that have been publicly read are horrifying. That was her intent. This book does not glorify the act. It's not written as appropriate behavior. In fact, the character's response is devastating and offers opportunities for classroom conversations about internalized hatred and its consequences. Further, it's being taught to upperclassmen, most of whom are about to start their college experience and being asked to handle text equally as complex and full of difficult passages, and who are likely not going to be exposed to teachers who suss out whether the book is personally challenging for anyone in their class. There's full transparency to students and their parents. The use of this book was included on the syllabus for the class. Parents were provided with this information at back-to-school night. As a board, we need to trust the educators we've hired to teach. As parents, we need to trust our children to advocate for themselves in all situations and to be able to learn the difficult things. It's what we prepared them for. They are not as fragile as we think. Thank you.
And I apologize because when it came time to the curriculum portion of the meeting, I know a lot of you had commented on American Studies. I was in a big hurry to get to taking action on that vote. Do you feel we should continue with that, or do you want to take a pause and go back to the item that we are not actually necessarily voting on, the review?
Right. We are currently in, we have a motion on the floor and a second.
Yeah. And I think I jumped ahead of Sahar, and
Do
I
you want to
apologize.
withdraw the motion and go to the,
We could do that.
and then pull it back? Or do you want to just vote on the course and then go to the?
The course and the... Continue with the motion for the course.
Okay, all right. If everybody at the table is comfortable with that, then I'm comfortable with that as well.
Yep.
Okay.
Like, make a comment?
Okay, Sahar was waiting as well.
It's okay. You can go ahead, Brendan, but I will comment on the book because it's part of the course. So, okay, all right. So first I want to thank our students. So impressed with you. Very articulate, very confident, well-trained, bravo, parents and teachers. And shout out to the Highs Eye and the Optic, because I know that the students have been covering our board meetings. So I have a high schooler who, as soon as I told her about the controversy around the Bluest Eye, and she informed me that they were actually reading it at that time, and I think she's a senior. And I talked to her about it, as most parents do, and I asked her, about the book and the issues that were raised, and she says, well, we had the conversation about what the intent of the author was, and in fact, it's in the foreword, and she pointed me to certain language, which coincidentally was not read by parents, and so as a parent and as a board member, I'd like to have the opportunity to read some parts of the book, because I think it's important if we're going to have a holistic understanding. And this is something that the students spoke specifically about before reading the book with our very experienced teachers that we should trust. When I began writing The Bluest Eye, I was interested in something else, not resistance to the contempt of others, ways to deflect it, but the far more tragic and disabling consequences of accepting rejection as legitimate, as self-evident. I knew that some victims of powerful self-loathing turn out to be dangerous, violent, reproducing the enemy who has humiliated them over and over. Others surrender their identity, melt into a structure that delivers the strong persona they lack. Most others, however, grow beyond it. There are some who collapse, silently, anonymously, with no voice to express or acknowledge it. They are invisible. The death of self-esteem can occur quickly, easily, in children, before their ego has legs, so to speak. Couple the vulnerability of youth with indifferent parents, dismissive adults, in a world which in its language, laws, and images reinforces despair, and the journey to destruction is sealed. I focus, therefore, on how something as grotesque as the demonization of an entire race could take root inside the most delicate member of society, a child, the most vulnerable member, a female, in trying to dramatize the devastation that even casual racial contempt can cause. I chose a unique situation, not a representative one. One extremity of Piccola's case stemmed largely from a crippled and crippling family, unlike the average black family and unlike the narrators. But singular as Piccola's life was, I believe some aspects of her woundability were lodged in all young girls in exploring the social and domestic aggression that could cause a child to literally fall apart. I mounted a series of rejections, some routine, some exceptional, some monstrous, all the while trying to avoid complicity in the demonization process Piccola was subjected to. That is, I did not want to dehumanize the characters who trashed Piccola and contributed to her collapse. This was in the foreword, so I just wanted to read that to say that, like all literature, there's context, and like all literature, it can be taken out of context. And I hope that the way that we educate our students, I was really happy to hear the teachers who are high school teachers come in here and express their professional opinions. And as someone who teaches university students, both undergrad and graduate students, and as someone who chose a school district because I believe it's 97% of our children are college bound, and many of them want to get into the best colleges. We are not doing a service to our children by keeping them sheltered. So I support our teachers, I trust our teachers, and I hope that we continue to prepare our students for a very challenging future in which they're going to be the leaders. And to be a leader, you have got to have a cosmopolitan, holistic education that challenges you at an intellectual level.
Board meeting, we heard from, I lost track of the number of parents, reading us passages from The Bluest Eye. 6, thank you. And like many of us, I was uncomfortable. I was just slightly disturbed. Sat on it. It raised a lot of questions, and I sat on it. I read the book. Thank you, Mike, for sending me a copy of it. And I read those passages 2 or 3 times because I really wanted to understand them. And I was uncomfortable every single time. But that's the point. It's not a comfortable topic. It's something that, with the context and discussion in a classroom, provides a very valuable lesson for students. And the conversation and the context that's provided in the classroom, not just the context of the story, but how it's discussed. These kids aren't. It's not a new topic for any of them, and I trust our teachers. Having gone through the school system, I know most of them. So it's not an abstract concept for me to say I trust our teachers.
Michael, did you want to speak?
Yeah, I do want to speak. Are you done? I was waiting for Brenda to finish. Okay, sure. So last meeting I was unable to attend because I was traveling, and about 25 minutes before I was boarding a plane, I was sent a text message about, it was specifically pages 162 and 163 of the Bluest Eye book. And, looking really quickly and like seeing what the book, I'm like, what is this? Reading it on its own. And when I read it on its own, it doesn't look appropriate material for a high school. So then when I came back, I downloaded a copy of the book and have read the whole book. And I would hope that when someone's reading the book, I heard a comment earlier that this book, people were thinking about it being banned just because we're banning racial books. I would hope that the people in our district are better than that, or people in our town are better than that, I should say, where I understand everybody's perspective of this book. It's a difficult read. Some people may not find the content within this book appropriate because of how they're raising their children, or whether it be their religion, or just they feel it's not appropriate for school. And then I just started thinking, and I've probably done more research on this book. I have been to probably 50, 60 different websites reading different perspectives on this book and just trying to become as educated as possible before we came here tonight. I was even an hour before I came to this meeting, I still was reading about it. And I looked at the book and I thought about it from perspective of a 17-year-old that would be reading this book and what else they're exposed to. They can go to the movies and see an R-rated movie which covers many of these topics, often has many of these topics that are discussed in the book. Or there's all different topics to cover, such as like suicide on Netflix. Very difficult topics to discuss. And thinking about it, should it be in a school atmosphere? And then also looking at the book recommendation and thinking about what if some student doesn't want to read the book? Or what if a parent doesn't want a student not read the book? We do have it as an option where they do have the ability to opt out. So after taking all this into context, I am going to actually say yes to approving this book for the district. because it has a precedent of 20 years or so, no, excuse me, 20 years, is that right? It's been in the district many years, and I don't think we should just go immediately overturn it. I know it's uncomfortable. I know a lot of people don't find it appropriate for the school district, but we can't just close off what our teachers are doing. They are trying to work in the best interests of our students, and I think it's shown in the way we get to school, and they're going to make their ultimate decision when they get into their career, and we're hopefully teaching them what's right and wrong. And I think while it's a difficult read, we need to continue offering the book in the district. That's all.
Before I pass the mic, I just wanted to make a point of clarification, which is that we are voting on the course curriculum for American Studies. So we're not choosing whether or not to use the book. We will do a review of the book review committee's recommendation on the book, but the motion before us today is the American Studies curriculum.
Correct, and we don't choose the books. So
No.
that was, so again, I want to be Gretchen when I grow older, and she gave me the right words and had talked about, like, I wanted to table it because I needed more information. It wasn't about trusting the teachers. It was about hearing these 2 pages in isolation, not having read the book, not having a child who had read the book, and not knowing, it was just completely, it's really hard to listen to. And I needed more information, wanted to speak to the teachers, et cetera. We want all of that. But we wanted more information, but it's not our job or our expertise to determine what books are chosen for courses. So I just wanted to say that again.
But before this American course, the student can opt out of the book should they choose not to read it or not want to read it, correct?
No, it's that the teachers don't necessarily assign this book. It's one of the options for assigning, but it doesn't have to. I'm sorry, can you hear me, Mike? Oh, but it doesn't have to be assigned. But I know what you're saying, because when we spoke to the teachers, we said, what happens if there's an issue? And that was when they had said there had never been an issue in all the years of teaching this. That doesn't mean, like Dr. Gonzalez said, just because it's been taught for 20 years, that doesn't mean it's good and should be taught. But that there's never been an issue. But if there was, there were protocols in place, and they explained some of those and how, similar to one of the teachers who spoke, how they had worked it out specifically with, they would work it out specifically with the children and parents.
A student could opt out from reading the book. They wouldn't necessarily, I don't want to use the word forced, but they would have required is a better word. They wouldn't necessarily have to be required to read the book if they found it offensive or for a religious reason or whatever other personal reason they may have.
I think the important thing is that if there is a parent or a student with a concern, that they discuss it with the teacher first. There is a process if there are questions. And because these kids are high school age, we encourage it to be the students who speak first with the teachers. Teachers begin the year with these kinds of conversations, discussing that there will be some mature themes that may be newer for some kids in some of the books, plural, that they will be reading. And so they talk about what kinds of issues will come up through the course of the year, and students have an opportunity to provide feedback about things that they may be uncertain about or that they may need a little bit more time to discuss and digest with the teacher's guidance. And so the kinds of things that we heard about were that, there have been students that have had concerns about a particular type of violence, whether it was something that they were familiar with or just something that they were concerned about, and the teachers worked with them so that they didn't need to hear a read aloud, for instance, or if there were a couple sections of a certain book that the student might be uncomfortable with, the teacher would help the student through that. And so rather than avoid an entire book completely, that there would be a way for the student to still benefit from what could be learned from a particular text in a way that was not traumatic.
Using that transparency word that Rob is so happy with. One of the things that we talked about I'm just looking through my notes, I wanted to ensure that this was transparent, and we were assured. I mean, this was a syllabus that was presented. There was a survey sent out to the children, and it was shared with the parents and followed up if there were any issues about all the course material, not just this particular book. In addition, In addition, that if the parent had a problem, not necessarily the children, because the children are not always comfortable, or it isn't always their problem either, it's the parent problem, what the policy and procedure should be moving forward. And we got information about how all of that could be addressed, as well as that they always started with the epilogue, how they looked at the characters through the civil rights movement lens. All of this information, when you look at it together, really gave us more of a sense of what is going on in the classroom, so we could really understand the purpose of this text in this course.
Mike, I heard your question in a different way, and I think the answer is yes. Based on the information that was given to me, that was provided by staff members, if there is a student who has a significant issue with this book, they're not going to be compelled to read the book.
That was my question, is if they had a personal experience that impacted them, or the parents had a personal experience that impacted the child in some way, I want to make sure that they do have that opportunity to go and opt out, and they wouldn't be required to read the book, and they could substitute another book that's more appropriate, or that's really what I was looking for. I just don't want to see a child or a parent, do something against their own personal beliefs or wishes. That's all.
Right, and I don't think that there's any teacher in this district who's going to compel somebody to do something against their wishes, but understand that it has to be a case-by-case basis, which is why everyone's not specifically saying, yes, do you understand? I mean, it's like every situation is going to be different. So you're asking for a bright line rule, and there's no bright line rule.
No, there is not. It's a large gray line that will cover, everybody will have a...
C9130 is?
Give me 1 second.
Complaints?
Yeah, it's our public complaints policy. Do you have a specific question?
With no challenged material?
No challenge material, so section 4, no challenge instructional or resource materials may be removed from the curriculum except by action of the Board of Education, and no challenge material may be removed solely because it presents ideas that may be unpopular or offensive to some. And removed material will be accompanied by the board's statement of its reasons for the removal.
I just want to highlight that we do not have the jurisdiction, nor would I support it if we did, to remove books from a curriculum simply because it's unpopular, according to some parents, as opposed to relying on the expertise of highly trained teachers.
And the other part of that policy, which may be helpful to people, is that if you have questions, there is a chain of command, and we typically direct parents who have questions about something that they're hearing, please start with the teacher first, and if you are not satisfied with what you're hearing from the teacher, you should speak to the area content supervisor or the building principal, and there's an escalation process. And we as a board can't get involved at the lower levels because at some point we may be called upon to make sort of a final determination at the very top if someone chooses to escalate that complaint process. So.
Amy, one other comment, not really related to really understanding tabling. I think one of the issues that people just need to understand when we're doing something, especially like tabling, that does not necessarily mean a no. And it seems that the tabling got sensationalized online as meaning a no. And I think we need to just listen to what is being said and not necessarily listen to what the news might be sensationalizing about this book, because I appreciated that it was actually tabled because it gave me the opportunity to go and do further research on it. Granted, we would have had a second reading, but I was able to do that for the first reading.
All right. Any other comments from board members at this point? Okay, let's vote on curriculum item number 2, first reading approval for the 3 courses.
Mike Beelan? Yes. Brendan Galligan? Yes. Rob Garrison?
Yes.
Layla Morelli?
Yes.
Gretchen Olig?
Yes.
Amy Root?
To the book complaint, let's finish up the curriculum agenda items. Item number 3, field trips and an overnight field trip, and item 4, interns and student teacher candidates.
Second.
Thank you. Brendan, any questions or comments on those? Let's vote on those, please, Dana.
Yes.
Brendan Galligan? Rob Garrison?
Yes.
Layla Morelli?
Yes.
Gretchen Olig?
Yes.
Amy Root?
Okay, and sorry, taking out of order because I did want to get to the action items. I skipped plumb over the report of the book review committee because we did have a formal complaint about that particular title.
Yes, so I would just like to take the opportunity to present the book review committee report to the board as well as members of the public who are watching this meeting tonight. On November 19th, we received a formal complaint regarding the book The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. A review committee was appointed per policy 9130, entitled Public Complaints and Grievances, which outlines the process to be followed regarding complaints about instructional and resource materials. The committee consisted of the content area supervisor, a high school teacher, high school media specialist, a board member, a layperson knowledgeable in the area of the work, and the high school principal. The committee spent considerable time reading the book and familiarizing themselves with the district policy in preparation for the book review, which took place in person to evaluate the complaint. The report of the committee was shared with the board, and tonight I'm summarizing the findings, beginning with the recommendation, followed by the rationale. It is the recommendation of the book review committee that The Bluest Eye remains on the approved textbook list for use within the context of an approved lesson and objective in 11th and 12th grade English classes. While recognizing the disturbing and upsetting nature of the passages referenced in the book complaint, the committee found that it is impossible to examine the value of The Bluest Eye without considering the book in its entirety. The committee report states that the novel is primarily concerned not with sexuality, but how racism and class can detrimentally influence people's actions and outlook on themselves. The report acknowledges that the book's themes are quite advanced and certain details very vivid. However, the text as a whole, the committee states, describes the way in which individuals learn to internalize oppression and explores the various outgrowths of internalized oppression in a way that is incredibly powerful. The committee goes on to say that the critical incidents that the characters experience show the audience how one learns to hate oneself. Morrison portrays the ways in which internalized oppression, shame, and anger have consequences that extend beyond the individual, making their way into the larger community. The committee cites the National Council of Teachers of English as recommending The Bluest Eye for readers in 11th grade and up. Committee members found the novel fits the parameters of the district's curriculum and makes it more complete, representing both an African American writer and a female voice. It has been an approved text in the Westfield Public School District for more than a decade. The report also outlines ways in which teachers support students, including a questionnaire at the beginning of the year to help educators follow up with students who have shared potentially triggering topics. In this specific case, the students were given a questionnaire, and the teacher provided parents at the beginning of the school year with a list of novels that would be read in class. In conclusion of the report, the committee references the statement in the policy that indicates that no challenge materials may be removed solely because it presents ideas that may be unpopular or offensive to some. The report concludes that The Bluest Eye provides commentary on the ways in which our ideas about beauty are socially constructed, making the text feel especially relevant to our students while encouraging critical thinking. A copy of the committee's report will be provided to the complainant along with a copy of any action taken by the board. If any action is taken, the complainant will also be informed that the decision of the board may be appealed to the Commissioner of Education. That concludes my report.
All right. So, yeah, go ahead.
So I held off on making comments on the curriculum side, because I wanted to combine my comments after hearing Dr. Gonzalez read the findings of the committee. You know, oftentimes when things are brought up during public comment, they're done so sort of in a vacuum. And a lot of the folks in the public, and including even some of those who bring up these issues, don't necessarily understand what's going on and the process that's in place here. And oftentimes, or at least of recent history, it's parents that are not part of that class or students who are not part of that class, and so they don't understand what is involved in these classes. When you look at the curriculum that we approve, it's not a page, it's not a book, it's not a singular topic. Our curriculum, and you know, Dr. Pinero goes through quite a few of these, to say the least, are oftentimes 20, 30, 40 pages. Because in order to get a course approved, you have to hit and touch upon different aspects of what's required, as well as then substantiate what goals you're trying to provide for those classes and how it relates back to an aspect of what's required and what's to be taught in a class. And so while it's disturbing to some to read certain passages from a book, when you look at what's encompassed in it, and when you hear what was provided by Dr. Gonzalez and others, that there's a questionnaire, that there are ways to be supportive of the students, and I'm on SIP, I'm on curriculum, so I did listen to the teachers and the supervisors go over this at our last meeting, and it's important to understand that more often than not, no matter what the text is, students are just thrown out there. In math, you're not just given a calculus book and say, here, go through and do all these calculus programs or equations. You're given the materials to understand what it is that you're learning and what the goal is for that. And so I'm happy to a certain extent that this was tabled, because it was good to hear from the supervisors and from the teachers about what really goes on, because I have a daughter who's in 6th grade, so I wouldn't necessarily know all the other stuff that goes on in any particular class because I haven't experienced that. And so it was really good to hear from them, and for them to express also the gratitude, although I hope it doesn't become weaponized, of our policy 9130, because a lot of districts do not have a policy similar to that. And so when an issue is brought up and something becomes controversial because it's called controversial, they often do not have parents or residents, you don't have to be a parent necessarily, to address that issue. And in this district, we do have this policy, and the policy's now been used twice this year, calendar year, and I think 3 times in the 6 years I've been on the board now. And so, you know, I'm thankful that we have that, because there is a place for people to, individuals to look at something that they may perceive as an issue and have it addressed, in a very timely fashion. This was brought up less than a month ago, and it's now been dealt with, where teachers, administrators, board members, and people in the public have taken time out of their schedules to address this, and I'm glad that we have that process in place. And I'm thankful for Gretchen, who outed herself as the board member on it, to express you know, her feelings on it, and I think it's a great process that we have.
Everything that Rob just said, and I just feel compelled, because we have these parents who are so vested that they're here at 10:15, which is remarkable, is to just remind us to keep our eye on the prize, which is really bolstering the finances to provide the highest quality education, and that's where the time is necessary. So I'm glad that everybody's engaged, but we really need to focus on what I think, and I think a lot of us agree, is the priority, which is making sure that our children have all the resources to get the best quality education they can get.
All right, so in accordance with that policy, at this point, we would only take a vote if we were going to take action to restrict the use of the resource. correct?
Correct.
Limit or remove?
Limit or remove this particular resource book from use, from its current use.
Yeah, as the committee recommends no change, there is no action for the board to take. While we're not voting on it, I do fully support the committee's recommendation, as I believe the consensus of everybody here is.
I think so.
So on that.
Yeah, which is great. So that's why when I originally referenced the report, I said I didn't necessarily think it was an action item, and why I skimmed over it in my haste to get to the curriculum agenda items. So if we are all in agreement on accepting the findings of the book review committee, I think the curriculum portion of our agenda is complete. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on.
All right, and we really do appreciate all of you who came out and devoted your time and spoke eloquently in support or out of concern for the use of this particular resource. It is helpful not only for us to hear your perspectives, but I think for other members of the community to hear your perspectives. So we do really appreciate that. All right, and that is the last action portion of the agenda. I would like the board to consider notes for the record. And then, do we have any unfinished business that we'd like to attend to? No? Okay. Any new business? I didn't think so. Any liaison reports? Yes, Brendan?
Always.
Always.
I'll start with the NJSIAA. Last week, I went to their executive committee meeting, and it was really nice to hear Westfield mentioned so many times by the leadership of that group.
And what's the NJSIAA?
Interscholastic Sports Association, the governing body for high school sports. The executive director said she was amazed to see our police and fire trucks there to escort the team back from Kane, and she was so excited she wished she could have hopped on the bus with the girls.
The girls' soccer team.
Yeah. Also, the Tournament of Champions legislation that was pending did pass. There is no more Tournament of Champions for any sports, although there is a movement towards possibly having single group level championships for football. So that would be extending the football season when every other season was consolidated a little bit. But that is very, very rough and nowhere near finalized. From the NJSBA, Union County's meeting is tomorrow evening at the Westwood. Not in Westwood, at the Westwood.
The Westwood and Garwood.
Yeah, which is between Westfield and Garwood, yes. Yeah. Not confusing at all. On the 19th, the Board of Directors meeting for the NJSBA met. Among other they covered the workshop, the statistics there, how many board members attended. About half of the board members in the state attended some part of the virtual conference, which is about 3 times higher than normal participation. And the courses that we were all signed up for it, those courses will be available until December 28th. Yeah, and you'll still be able to get credit for them. There was some discussion about legislation that doesn't directly impact Westfield, but the advocacy wing of that association successfully lobbied Governor Murphy to veto legislation, and that legislation was since changed and repassed in both Assembly and House. Regarding regionalization, the change that the school boards got put into it is that no district can be forced into or out of a regional district or sending receiving relationship without voter approval. So there are some pending lawsuits dealing with possibly forced busing or other racial integration issues, and nothing substantial can happen there without voter approval in those districts. That's to be seen what actually happens with the court cases, but it was a big watch item, and the association successfully got changes put into the legislation. And yesterday, those changes were passed by the Senate. There is one piece of legislation that seems to came out of nowhere and is fast-tracked that we do have to watch for. That is, this legislature is trying to explicitly remove healthcare costs from the jurisdiction of the council on local mandates. Basically, there's a provision in the state constitution that if the state mandates something or changes something, they have to fund it. and they're explicitly removing healthcare from that obligation. It appears to be in direct conflict with the state constitution, but to be seen, and it does appear to have the fast track, and the legislature was introduced last week and has already passed through committees in both chambers. This is the lame duck session, things get fast tracked, and it's not always the highest quality legislation that gets the inside track to approval. So that's one to watch. Not that the Council on Local Mandates does much to help us. And that's it.
Okay. That's plenty. Yeah, all done? Mm-hmm. All right.
Like I said,
Okay.
all done.
All right, cool. I met with the high school PTSO, which feels, very different from what you're telling us about, and heard a bit about the homecoming activities at the high school. There was a dance that was held because of social distancing and being mindful of health concerns. It was seniors only, so there's been some discussion about how to get the other underclassmen involved in some type of a social event that is comparable. So speaking as someone whose kids graduated in 2017 and 2019, I think it's great that it's taking hold, and that the kids are having fun with it, and because they have not had a homecoming dance here for a long time. So it's nice to see that's coming back. There were other issues that were being concerned, but we'll move along. And I'm meeting with the Franklin PTO Executive Board on Friday. Dr. Gonzalez, I know you were at their general meeting and met some of their parents, right? Yep. Okay. Any other liaison reports? No? All right. Seeing that we have some people who are ready for the second public comment portion, I think we'll go right to that. So again, during this portion of the meeting, members of the public are invited to address the Board of Education on any topic. So you don't need to mention an agenda item if it's not related to that. Just your name and address. The board requests that individuals state their name and address for the record, and ask that all remarks be directed to the board president and not to individual board members or staff. Board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking. Specifically, comments regarding personnel matters are discouraged and cannot be responded to by the board. Students and employees have specific legal rights afforded by the laws of New Jersey. The board bears no responsibility, nor will it be liable for any comments made by members of the public. If a matter concerning a district staff member is of interest or concern to a resident, the matter should be referred to the responsible building principal, superintendent of schools, or the Board of Education, either by telephone, letter, or email. And again, although the board may not respond to items raised during the public forum, all public comments will be considered. Please note that if any member of the public becomes disruptive during the meeting, the board president may terminate the participant's statement. Continued disruptions may result in removal from the meeting or adjournment of the meeting. Each speaker's statement will be limited to 3 minutes in duration as before. All right. Thank you, Mr. George, for waiting.
Thanks. Kyle George, 605 Short Hills Court. Ms. Root, in response to something, to a comment I made about the correlation between the anti-Semitic remarks that the guest speaker made in March at the high school, one of your fellow board members made a statement afterwards and said that it was anti-Israel, but not anti-Semitic, if I may paraphrase. In response to the rampant anti-Semitism that's occurred recently at the high school, you sent out a definition of anti-Semitism from the American Jewish Committee. The American Jewish Committee's definition of anti-Semitism is, and I quote, denying Jewish people their right to self-determination, e.g., by claiming that the existence of a state of Israel is a racist endeavor. Calling it an apartheid state is exactly that. According to this definition, which you sent out, saying that Israel is an apartheid state is anti-Semitic, and doing so while being aided by district librarians and other officials gives it legitimacy. This was only 9 months ago. In those 9 months since, there have been 5 or 6 instances of swastikas appearing in the high school or other places in Westfield, including one a week after. How's that not correlation? I don't care that these aren't the first swastikas, and they probably won't be the last, unfortunately. But they definitely won't be the last with this kind of apologist attitude. If you were to turn the tables and hypothesize a situation where, say, another speaker were to make disparaging remarks about another ethnicity, race, or people, their microphone would have been cut off and they would have been perp walked out of the building. The reason anti-Semitism exists is because of the signaling from the inaction of people in a position to do something about it. Finally, you, on a different topic, you recently received a letter from the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism about the previously considered book, Our Skin, which was read in kindergarten. Comments were made about how books can't be removed because they are unpopular opinions, but certainly they can be removed because they're potentially illegal. And a lawyer from that foundation made a very compelling legal argument that that book violates Title VI in the way it was used. And I want to know what the district's response to that letter is. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Joshua Sacker. I am talking about the recent anti-Semitic acts at the high school. I reside at 8 Hampton Court, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to address the Board of Education. It has reached a point where Hanukkah and swastikas found in Westfield share a common trait. They both occur once a year. Thus, it didn't surprise me that the first one found this year was during Hanukkah. I'm quite saddened to say that when I saw Mrs. Fendis on BDTV to relay the news that a swastika was found in the bathroom, I wasn't shocked. Here we go again, same old story, I said to myself. Unfortunately, I have come to expect these acts of anti-Semitism and hatred. One of the main reasons my family moved to Westfield when I was in 3rd grade was because of its inclusive, accepting, and safe community and environment. However, right now, I can't say I feel accepted or safe at my school. It's disheartening to know that someone, or now possibly multiple people in my community, have hate towards people of my religion. They are ignorant and don't realize the meaning of the symbol and the pain that it causes, especially for those of us who have lost relatives in the Holocaust. However, at this point, it is naive to believe the latter. Throughout high school, I've constantly heard the idea that the perpetrators are just knuckleheads who are making a joke, or the person who drew the swastikas probably isn't even anti-Semitic, they're just messing around. While I used to believe this notion, I'm not so sure anymore, and it seems impossible that the perpetrator wouldn't know the hurtful nature of the symbol after years of these events and several emails from the administration. Additionally, it is one thing to claim ignorance when a swastika is found at an elementary school or even a middle school, but it is alarming and unrealistic to think that a high school student doesn't know the hateful nature of this symbol. To make ourselves feel better, let's say ignorance is the true cause. Then, I believe incorporating more Holocaust education into the curriculum will go a long way. And when I say Holocaust education, I don't mean a two-day brief history lesson of the statistics while learning all about World War II. I mean a deep dive into the first-hand accounts and horrors that Jewish victims had to endure. This year, my senior year, my final year of education in the school system, is the first time I've done this kind of deep dive. It should be mandatory for all grades in all schools at all levels. In my AP English class, we recently read passages from Primo Levi's Survival in Auschwitz and Elie Wiesel's Night. Even though I visited the Holocaust Museum and have prior knowledge, I have learned so much in these past few weeks. Today, we looked at Holocaust survivor David Olaire's paintings to visually see his experience as a prisoner in Auschwitz. No humane student, after reading these books and seeing these paintings, would commit the anti-Semitic acts we've seen these past weeks. And if they do, then we have a bigger issue to deal with. Hate and anti-Semitism are fueled by ignorance, and the only way to combat ignorance is through education. If we all come together to educate, we can make our school and community more accepting and safe. Thank you.
My name is Tim Eaton. I live at 762 Knollwood Terrace. At the town council meeting last month, after public comment on the Edison Field plan, the mayor talked about compromise. We are for compromise by sharing and spreading increased field capacity to multiple locations with grass and no, excuse me, no stadium lights. Concerning the Edison plan, compromise is not reducing safety with increased traffic. Compromise is not installing artificial turf with increases in non-contact injuries, carcinogens, flooding, excess heat, and pollutants. Compromise is not devaluing homes near the Edison Field. What about the zoning laws protecting our property values? Compromise is not increasing noise with light and activity at night. Compromise is not changing a quiet street into a parking lot with lines of parked cars on both sides. Compromise is not adversely impacting quality of life in the surrounding neighborhoods on a permanent basis. Please, let's develop an athletic field plan with more locations, more green grass, and no towering lights, and an acceptable parking plan. Using some other examples to make my point, I would not want a 6-lane highway built through my neighborhood. I would not want a parking lot replacing our streets. I would not want a gas station built next to me or my neighbors. So why would I want an outdoor quasi-stadium with tower lights and artificial turf in our neighborhoods? I wouldn't. Please help us on this issue and defeat the Edison plan as it now stands. Once again, please, let's develop an athletic field plan with more locations, green grass, and no tower lights, and acceptable parking plans. That truly is the compromise. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Charlotte Cohen. My address is 1605 Boynton Avenue. To say I'm disappointed in the lack of urgency in response to the anti-Semitic hate crimes now happening daily at Westfield High School from the district administration is an understatement. I'm disappointed that the administration felt it was necessary to include that the first swastika this month was drawn in pencil, as the language felt diminishing of the hate crime in comparing it to past carved swastikas. I'm disappointed that there is so much emphasis on this no place for hate contract that we had signed earlier that day, but no recognition that we were amidst a Jewish holiday. I'm disappointed that the meeting after school to discuss the incident was informal and not mandatory. In that meeting, I was very vocal about my suggestions for administration, such as a mandatory assembly or conversation during school hours to educate students about the rise of anti-Semitism in modern society and the hateful symbolism of the swastika. Although administration has agreed to this, the responsibility and planning of the event has been put in the hands of willing student volunteers, making it feel as if the administration does not care enough to do it themselves. Furthermore, these conversations will be held on December 24th, 2+ weeks after the first incident occurred. The reason for the delayed response is so that administration has time to train faculty about anti-Semitism and intolerance. These past few incidents have probably made 10 anti-Semitic hate crimes since my time at Westfield High School. Shouldn't staff training have been done a really long time ago? Now we wait to have these conversations weeks later, and allow more hate crimes to be committed. It is time to start being proactive, not reactive. My great-grandparents were concentration camp survivors, and my grandma was born in a displaced persons camp. So I feel I have a responsibility to make sure anti-Semitism ends here. It was never and will never be acceptable for my Jewish peers and I to be subject to and desensitized to hate crimes at this school. I'm tired of hearing that Holocaust education is present in this school, because the last time I learned anything about the true severity of the Holocaust and the divisive, hateful symbolism of the swastika was in 5th grade at Jefferson when I read Number the Stars. Although it has been in the curriculum of multiple of my English and history courses at Westfield High School, it's one of those things that we never quite get to or only learn from an American foreign policy perspective. It is well past the time to change the curriculum and make Holocaust education mandatory.
My name is Mike Cohen. I'm at 1605 Boynton. I think Josh and Charlotte addressed the vast majority of what I felt need to be said, but I really am concerned, and, I've spoken with Mrs. Fendis. I've basically understood that it's going to be very, very difficult to ever catch whoever's doing these, vandalizing the school with anti-Semitic and racial slurs. So if you're not going to catch the person, you really need to focus on prevention. Okay? And I think that the consequences need to be clearly articulated. So I read the Code of Conduct. Okay? The Code of Conduct is vague. It doesn't say anything specific. Literally nothing. Okay? So I believe that any student who is caught, okay, should be expelled. Period. End of story. If there's extenuating circumstances, let that student and let that parent appeal and make their case as to why they should be let back into the school. I also think that it is a point of pride that, and I think you just mentioned, 97% of kids at Westfield High School go on to college. Don't allow any teacher to write a recommendation for a kid who's caught doing this. Make the consequences harsh. Maybe that'll prevent this from happening in the future. Because what's the consequences now, the vague consequences now, don't seem to be having any effect. Thank you.
Camille Pripp, 1113 Columbus Avenue. I expressed an opinion and people attacked my character on social media without even knowing me. For kids to be kind and respectful, parents should reflect that as well and not prejudge. No place for hate should be a concept we as parents all model outside of the classroom. I do not want my daughters reading The Bluest Eye for required reading as juniors next year. Just because this book has been used for several years and there haven't been any complaints does not mean all students have been okay with reading it. The content is disturbing. I, as an adult, found some of the passages graphically depicting the pleasure a pedophile feels when raping his 11-year-old daughter very disturbing and offensive to read. As teenagers, are some of them comfortable, especially if traumatized by some kind of molestation, admitting having an issue with reading the book? This is the main issue for me. I am not a racist. This is not political for me. I am concerned about this book being a trigger for some students. If some students admit having an issue reading this book in a required English class, can there please be alternatives so they are not forced to read this book? That's all I'm asking for, some type of compromise. My son was not allowed to opt out from reading this book in his required English class. That's the main issue for me. I understand now that I'm finding out at this meeting that they're given a questionnaire before reading this book, but can they opt out? That's the main issue. Thank you for listening.
Emily Barker, 434 Longfellow. I'm going to talk about The Bluest Eye, but in terms of policy. According to conversations with Westfield's NJSBA rep, Gwen Thornton, and two members of the NJEA, as well as anecdotal educator conversations with 9 through 12 schools in New York and New Jersey, there are many districts in those states that have written and unwritten policies, depending on the district, where a teacher choosing a controversial text would send written notification to parents. It would give the parents the option to opt out of the text. On the occasion that they do, the teacher is ready with an alternative text. There seems to be some confusion because, as we've heard from two separate parents in two separate schools at two separate levels, there has been no option to opt out. So that either means that there is not a clear policy here, or that there is one written and it's being ignored. So my suggestion is that first of all, if there was a written policy that existed, that English 4 teacher in question at the Westfield High School would have given her students' parents a heads up. This was for the required class, not the elective. That teacher would have had an alternative text ready for those students of those parents who took issue with that text. Had it occurred, the parent would not have come before the board. It's, again, a required class. In this case, the teacher knowingly chose this text. Not only this, she had to know that this text had years of controversy surrounding it in multiple states. And when approached by this parent, the teacher told her they must do the assignment. There was no alternative. This is the same situation for the Our Skin book. There were actually multiple parents who asked the principal of Lincoln School if they could opt out. They were told no. So the board, the superintendent, and the district at large has a decision to make. The district should respect reasonable parent requests. Perhaps making a real policy, a written policy that says, if you are choosing a controversial text, you will give parents a heads up. Make it written so that it's not taken on a case-by-case basis. If it's a written policy, all teachers would know that it exists, all parents would know that it exists. Again, I've said this many times. If we do things like this, we can avoid upset parents, strife within the community. It would be a better place for all of us in the community. So I am suggesting that we entertain putting this policy in place. Thank you.
Hi, Joanna Sexton, 109 Belmar Terrace. So what I want to address are the persistent and not properly addressed acts of anti-Semitism and racism that have occurred within the past 2 weeks, and years for that matter, at Westfield High School. It's deeply upsetting to me, both as a Jewish individual and as a student at the Westfield High School, at the lack of administrative action and the willingness to put off these issues and minimize them. For example, the language used in both emails, which were not sent to the students, emphasizing the fact that it was signed on the day where the No Place for Hate pledge was signed, but not the fact that it was signed on a Jewish holiday. The fact that it was written in pencil instead of the fact that a sign that was anti-Semitic was written on the wall of a bathroom where students could see it. It makes both students and teachers feel unsafe in an environment where you should be learning and growing instead of feeling unsafe. So, though I am in complete support of these meetings that we're having after school, they're completely voluntary, and when you go to them, you're preaching to a choir of people who are in agreeance of this. There's no real change that's being made, and when students make suggestions for change to be made, we don't see anything. We see a meeting happening on the 24th after multiple incidents have occurred within saying, we need a meeting that's going to happen sooner, and we need training that isn't just relying on a student's willingness to create a list of questions so that way we can talk about it for an hour and then it's forgotten. We need actual change in regards to the curriculum that isn't just a small section of our 5th grade education talking about Number the Stars. It needs to be something that's taught at least every few years in history and English classes alike, and it needs to happen immediately if possible. Thank you.
I want to, Michael Pittman, 264 Hazel Avenue. I want to preface my comments saying I'm not Jewish, I'm not black, and I'm not part of any targeted group. So please take my comments with a grain of salt, because I think the people who were targeted, even if I don't agree with everything that they're saying or the rationale that they believe to be the cause of these incidents, need to be heard over me. I do want to say that. That said, how I see these incidents, both the anti-Semitic and racist graffiti in the bathroom and around town, I hear from a lot of people of a common phrase of, this is not who we are. I bristle at that because after years of this, this seems to be who we are, at least a small section of us. I think a message of this is not who we strive to be, or this does not represent our community, sure. But let's not pretend that the people who made these are not part of our community. They are.
I really came up here to say, to really just get it on record that I know that you're going into looking at these incidents, but there are other incidents that about a year ago I found propaganda stickers of a white supremacist organization, which I won't name, but I'm happy to tell you offline, that were anti-Jewish, anti-immigrant, anti-black, around town, including, which wasn't reported in the paper, because frankly, at this point in the afternoon, after looking around town for stickers, I just got too tired to tell the police about this one, and I wish I had at this point. It was right in front of the high school. I have photographic evidence if you'd like that. I want that on the record, and I do want to talk about, not talk about it, but just present anti-Semitism, racism, and I'll put misogyny in there as well, because I think a lot of these ideas have a strong violence towards women aspect. This is a public health crisis. This is not just anti-bullying. This is a public health crisis which can be tied to, lots of things, including real violence in our community on a very strong level. Thank you.
Julie Steinberg, 109 Belmar Terrace. 2 points. One, thank you for your action on the bluest eye. I want to state clearly that I very much do not agree with the proposal to give parents the options to opt out of decisions on what should or shouldn't be read. That's a very slippery slope that will lead to a lot of other choices. This isn't Burger King. You cannot have it your way. What's next? Maybe we should or shouldn't teach evolution. We should or shouldn't teach slavery. It's too much. It is not for, and to my earlier point, I am very concerned about the undermining of our public schools and of this institution by these very behaviors of our teachers who are already overloaded and overwhelmed by these ongoing efforts to constantly undermine them and to undermine our educational processes. And that's really what this is about. It's not about these individual issues. It's about undermining our institutions, which we must protect. Secondly, to the issue of anti-Semitism. This isn't the first time I've come before you. Many of you remember me from several years ago when this started, and as you know, in some cases several years ago we did catch the perpetrators, and there was a lot of debate about that because it was very private, obviously, but there was not a lot of strict enforcement, or there was some debate about whether or not enforcement was strong enough. But I think the issue about prevention is really more the discussion that needs to be had here. I agree with the previous speakers. I did a lot of work privately with the previous superintendent, as long as with Dr. Pinero and several board members, as well as several principals. And I would say this: I am concerned that I do not see the ongoing then relationship with Kane University and the Holocaust Center and the training that the teachers from each school are supposed to be receiving being maintained. I'd like the board to provide information at the next board meeting about how many teachers from each school over the past 4 years have been receiving training and how many are going to receive it this year from Kane, because that is where it starts. Who is the who's the person who's supposed to be representing the school, each school? I'd also say this: I was thrilled to see in the superintendent's note to the parents that, yes, the curriculum is finally being linked. Thank you. That was one of my first points, is that you can't find it anywhere. So thank you for linking it. But my point then and now is that it's weak. It is a highly complex matrix that cuts across multiple disciplines. And honestly, when you ask teachers and when you ask principals how it works, it's really difficult. It's really difficult for them. And I understand why, but it's very difficult to say for which grade, for which discipline, what materials are being used and how. And you're supposed to have at least several resources at each school, across each curriculum, across each discipline, as well as experts in each discipline, so chairs across each grade, who can tell you which ones would be the best materials. And the truth is, we don't have that. And I would say that that's really what needs to happen, is that material, that curriculum needs to be looked at much more closely, and that needs to be done by people who have gone to that program. I'd also strongly recommend that you get some parents involved.
Okay.
Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Steinberg.
Jean Marie Ryan, 142 Vernon Terrace, Westfield, New Jersey. The other reason I was here tonight is I am deeply concerned by these crimes, and they are crimes. They're assaults. My husband is of Jewish descent. I am not. But that's beside the point. These are our friends, our neighbors, our community. And yes, it's probably true that it has always happened here, and it will always happen. And honestly, if we're going to be really rigorous, every human being has always had a moment when, no matter how liberal you think you are, how free of prejudice you think you are reactive in an unattractive way. But until we have these open discussions about this and actually approach the problem, nothing's going to change. Whomever made the suggestion of tying real accountability into this and refusing to let the teachers write the references, having lived here most of my life, I think that would be your most effective course of action, at least in a punitive way. However, the open discussion, and I'm sorry to mandate it, but I think you do have to mandate it, is essential. The after school is nice, but something where everyone needs to participate is vital. That's all. Thank you for your time, and good night.
Thank you for the public comment. Dr. Gonzalez, did you want to address?
I'll go through the list. There was one reference in the beginning to the ADL's definition of anti-Semitism being included in the correspondence by the district. That was in the joint statement that was issued, and that portion of the joint statement was in reference to the mayor and council adopting that definition. So I want to be clear that the definition that was adopted was not part of the school district. It was part of the mayor and council's actions in that portion of the statement. The fair lawsuit that was referenced is a lawsuit that would not be open for public discussion. All matters are private and considered by the board and acted on accordingly. With regards to the concerns raised, and certainly have been raised tonight and have been raised in the past, they continue to be considered deeply and heavily by the administration, I'm sure by members of this board, on how we can continue to work together to address the efforts at a board level, at an administrative level, and certainly at a community level. I do want to mention that, the attempts by the administration to involve students is really to ensure that they have a voice. And I was in attendance at that meeting, at that first meeting after school, where the voices of the students were heard loud and clear, including their disappointment that there wasn't a larger turnout of individuals who were there, which is why the focus on having a school-wide discussion was something that was worked towards and has been worked towards. I do want to reiterate that it is incumbent on the administration to make sure that everyone is prepared when engaging in such a discussion. So I do understand that it may be perceived as a lack of urgency, but it is in no ways something that the administration is dragging their feet on, but they want to make sure that they're doing properly. They want to get it right because they want to make sure that this important discussion is held in the most constructive and productive way possible. So I do appreciate that feedback, and certainly want to make sure that we communicate that clearly to our students so that it's not perceived as anything less than that. But that's on us. We need to make sure we communicate that. I do want to also mention that in the past week, I've had several conversations with a number of organizations, including Kane University's Holocaust Center, Resource Center, as well as the director of the Diversity Council, who have shared, the past relationship, who celebrated the past relationship. So Dr. Pinero and I both engaged in that conversation. We'll continue that work, and I look forward to being able to provide updates as to the work that has been undergoing, and certainly the work ahead. So thank you for raising that, because it is something that I'm proud to be a part of now that I'm here in the school district. And certainly want to make sure that, all the work that we do continues to look at, as I mentioned, the curriculum offerings, and the feedback that, was shared tonight is certainly constructive, and with Dr. Pinero here will be considered as we look at our curriculum moving forward. So thank you.
That sums it up pretty well.
Okay.
Yep. Any other comments? Okay. All right. All right then. Then I would like the board to approve the following resolution. Be it resolved that the Board of Education move into private session for the purpose of discussing matters rendered confidential by state and federal law, including negotiations, harassment, intimidation, and bullying incidents. And be it further resolved that any discussion held by the board which need not remain confidential, and the results of the discussion will be made public as soon as practicable. Can I have a second? Mike, thank you. All right. Do we need to vote on that, or we just? All in favor? Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight and for sticking with us through the new format, and we appreciate it very much.